I'm writing a musical about the Odyssey. 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 I'm writing a musical about the Odyssey, and this is how it goes. There once was a man, cunning man running through the sky and the sands in the land of gods and monsters, sought to see his family prosper at any and all costs, and through the process he became dauntless. Now he's remembered forever for his endeavors, and all he ever lived was the life of a legend, a life that was epic. 600 men, 600 men under my command, with only one goal in mind.
Make it back alive to our homeland.
600 men, 600 miles of open sea. But the problem's not the distance,
Look what lies in between.
and Ithaca's waiting. My kingdom is waiting. Penelope's waiting for me. So full speed ahead. Epic is a musical adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey, and it tells the story of Odysseus, who after helping finish a 10-year-long war, has to sail through 600 miles of open waters, and he has to fight gods and monsters to make it back home to his kingdom, where his wife, the queen of Ithaca, Penelope, and his son, the prince of Ithaca, Telemachus, are waiting for him. But on his journey, my fellow friend, However, on his journey, he struggles with the idea of ruthlessness and whether it's a necessary component in protecting that which you care about. Here are 3 things you need to know about Epic the Musical. Number 1. The musical language of Epic is such that the more divine or magical the characters and the setting, the more electronic elements are incorporated into the music. This is why a song like Just a Man, sung by Odysseus, who is in fact just a man, relies more on traditional orchestration. On the other hand, God games, which as the title suggests, has tons of gods, will rely much more on electronic elements like electronic synth and electronic brass. Número 2. Epic is completely sung through. This means that from the beginning till the end of the show, the story is being told through song. That's why there are 40 songs in the show. There are 20 songs in each act, and I'm hoping to make each act about 1 hour and 5 minutes in length. Number 3. This musical is inspired by the Odyssey, meaning I take creative liberties. Some of these are more subtle, like condensing certain events so that it better fits the format of a show, or they can be more major changes from the source material, like leaning harder on certain character motivations or further developing relationships between characters. Here are 3 more things to know about Epic the Musical. Number 1. A lot of my biggest inspirations as I'm writing Epic come from video games and anime. This is because I've always been a fan of that addictive sense of progression that we get from good video games. And I love the larger-than-life themes, emotions, and messages that we get from anime. And once you listen to Epic completely, it'll be very clear and apparent where I got my inspirations. We got some Kingdom Hearts in there, we got Pokemon, God of War, Attack on Titan, Fullmetal Alchemist, Dragon Ball. In fact, a lot of my favorite moments in Epic are just the ones that I got to nerd out the most while writing. Both Zeus and Poseidon literally have final smashes. Number 2. Most of the characters in Epic have a specific instrument that represents them musically throughout the show. This idea of representing characters with a musical instrument is one that I got from the animated film Peter and the Wolf, which my mom used to watch with me a lot when I was younger. Some of my favorite character instrument pairings include Odysseus being a guitar, but the type of guitar switches depending on the context, Athena being a piano because of the dexterity and skill needed to use it, and Poseidon as a trumpet and brass section that gets more electronic and distorted depending on how angry and wrathful he is. Okay, also I almost forgot to mention this, there are literally parts where characters will take the instrument or like adopt the instrument that is used by another character, and I can't spoil it, but trust me when I say it's awesome. Number 3. The show is divided into sagas, with each saga focusing on a major point in the Odyssey. It allows the show to have this very episodic feel while also allowing us to have a regular passage of time. As of right now, the show is divided into 9 sagas with these names: the Troy Saga, the Cyclops Saga, the Ocean Saga, the Circe Saga, the Underworld Saga, the Thunder Saga, the Wisdom Saga, the Vengeance Saga, and the Ithaca Saga. My favorite saga is the Thunder Saga, but I also really like the Vengeance Saga. But the Wisdom Saga has one of my favorite moments in the show. So, yeah. When we look at an adaptation like this, it's important to ask the question, what is the purpose of this piece? We of course want to entertain people and bring people together, but what is this work saying about the world? As many of you know, in Epic, the main lesson is that it is necessary to have a capacity for ruthlessness in order to protect yourself and that which you care about. That being said, most of the changes I make from the Odyssey to Epic are to serve that theme and that purpose. Odysseus' character arc is that he slowly learns to embrace ruthlessness in order to get back to his family. In the Odyssey, we don't really see Odysseus ponder the morality of his choices, but in Epic, that's the central focal point. I try to keep as many of the iconic characters and locations from the source material as possible, while also making adjustments to the story so that it serves the theme of ruthlessness and allows us to track the character arcs. The Lotus Eaters are a really good example of this. In the source material, Odysseus sends some of his men to go inspect the island, but then later has to retrieve them after they've eaten the lotus. In Epic, however, this is a more personal moment between Odysseus and Polites, and it allows us to explore the philosophical ideology that opposes ruthlessness. Open arms. Another example is that in the Odyssey, Poseidon and Odysseus never meet face to face, but in Epic, Poseidon confronts Odysseus and establishes his ideology of ruthlessness.
Die.
In the Odyssey, Polites is only mentioned like twice if I remember correctly, one of them being on Circe's island. But in Epic, we develop him as a character more so that there are more emotional stakes, especially when we lose him. One funnier example is the winions, which serve as a replacement for Aeolus' children.
Welcome.
The winions do not exist in the Odyssey, they are purely specific to Epic. While providing some moments of levity in an otherwise serious show, the winions also foreshadow to later moments in the show when Odysseus has to be extra ruthless. In the music of Epic, many characters have instruments that are specific to them. Here are some examples. Odysseus is represented by a guitar that changes type based on his intentions and mood.
Remember then, when the fire begins to fade. Will these actions haunt my days?
Athena is represented by a piano, and whenever she uses her signature move Quick Thought, a clock sound effect plays to the tempo of the music.
Goddess of wisdom, master of war.
Eurylochus is the voice of the soldiers and crew, and so his singing is often accompanied by the voices of his comrades.
600 men.
Polites likes to greet the world with open arms, and so his instruments are a lot more playful, welcoming, and higher pitched, like a kalimba and a marimba.
This life is amazing when you greet it with open arms.
Poseidon is represented by a trumpet.
You are the worst kind of good, cause you're not even great.
Zeus is the king of gods and the god of thunder, and so he's represented by an electronic bass and brass hybrid.
Tell me, Odysseus, if I were to make you choose.
Circe is a regal queen, and so her music has a string ensemble that plays a lot of staccato and pizzicato notes.
There are other modes of control.
Calypso is stuck on a gorgeous island, and so her instruments are the handpan and the steel drum.
Someone arrived today.
Hermes is represented by what I like to call harps and arps, the harp being the musical instrument, and arps being electronic plucked synth arpeggios.
Hello.
And finally, Aeolus, the wind god, is represented by my favorite wind instrument, the flute, as well as some synthetic vocals. Penelope is represented by a viola backed by a string ensemble. Telemachus is represented by an indie piano.
There are strangers in our halls.
You'll know why once you watch the show. But he also has an acoustic strummed guitar, like his dad, and a string ensemble, like his mom. Antinous and the Suitors are an interesting case because they're essentially the dark versions of many other character instrument pairings of the show. They have a grungy electric guitar because they're trying to replace Odysseus.
Wanna entertain me?
They have a cello-led string ensemble when they threaten to hurt Penelope. They have a trumpet in their music because Antinous is a main antagonist to Telemachus, similar to how Poseidon is to Odysseus.
Fight, little wolf, fight one.
And Antinous is backed by the vocals of the other suitors, just like Eurylochus is to the other crewmates.
Waters down while we slowly age.
While Euphemus, the Cyclops, has a cello but is backed by some synth.
Time to drink your beautiful way you stand.
Charybdis, the whirlpool monster, does not have a specific instrument, however, it is still distinct because its music has a time signature of 5/4.
Then oh, bring it on. I'm not dying here.
Scylla has a really fast fiddle and is also backed by some synths. How did you choose the instrumentals for the characters and why? This is a great question. When choosing instruments for the characters, it's really a process of trial and error. First, I think about the character and what the vibes of that character are. Like, are they a very serious character? Or are they a very funny, like, whipsy-dipsy character? That's a word I just made up. I don't know what that means. Or are they like a cunning character? Are they like a witty character? Are they like what's the character like? And then trying out different instruments to see if it fits well, if the music that I'm able to create with that instrument properly conveys the vibe, the intentions, the context around that character. The first song of Epic the Musical is super important because I try to establish three things. Número uno, what kind of show is Epic? Number two, what is the musical language of this show and how does it apply to the characters? Number three, what kinds of themes can we expect to see in Epic? Now let's dive in and see how all of those questions are answered in the first song. So the first half of the song follows Odysseus as he gives orders to his fellow comrades right before the siege of Troy, where they jump out of the Trojan horse. And what's really cool about this moment is that while the music is establishing a couple motifs, it's also gradually getting bigger and bigger until the moment they actually jump out of the Trojan horse. And it's at that moment that we understand that this is a musical of large proportions and epic scale. Now, onto the musical language of the show. What's really cool about this song is that the first half establishes what kind of music we can expect when we're dealing with mortals, whereas the second half, which is when Zeus comes in, establishes the kind of music to expect when we're dealing with the divine and with the godlike and with the magical. The first half is heavily reliant on orchestral music, and on top of that, Odysseus is communicating using one of the purest forms of music, spoken rhythm. However, when Zeus comes in, it's the first electronic synth that we hear in the show. Listen to how the style of the music changes as Zeus enters. This alone tells us that the music will get more electronic when we're dealing with deities. This also opens a lot of fun doors in this musical playground that we've built. And finally, the themes of the show. In the first half of the song, we learn that the most important things to Odysseus are his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. However, in the second half of the song, Zeus presents a situation that puts both of those in danger. Without getting too into it, because I want you guys to hear it for yourselves, Odysseus has to choose whether to let someone live when that same person is prophesied to kill him and his family in the far future. And we can hear that conflict between him and Zeus, as well as a mix between orchestral and electronic elements, in this section of the music. And so within the first song, we learn that Epic is about difficult choices. It's about the lengths that we'll go to protect what's ours and to protect what we care about. But it's all hidden under some fun music.
Ah! Yeah! Ah! Ah! Yeah! Ooh! Yo! Ah! Ah! Yeah! Oh! Yeah! Ooh! Oh! Yeah! Oh!
Sorry, ready?
Ah! Ah! Ooh! Yo! Ah! Ah! Yeah! Oh! Yeah! Ooh! Oh! Yeah! Oh! Good. Oh! Ah! Oh! Yeah! Oh! Yeah! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Ah! Ah!
Okay, so I get super excited by that song, and I want to tell you guys a few reasons why. So this is straight up how the show begins. This is how we meet Odysseus. He is a tactician. And so not only are we introduced to him as a character, we're also introduced to him musically. Because the first instrument that we hear in the entire show is an electric guitar. But wait, there is more. Because in the second half of the song, we see another, more compassionate side of Odysseus. And so we're introduced to another aspect of his music at the same time. And so in the first song, we meet our main character, we see the different sides of him, and we see how those different sides are represented musically. The ruthless warrior side being represented by the electric guitar, and the more human side being represented by the nylon string guitar.
I'm just a man who's fighting for his life, who longs to see his wife. I long to see my family. I long to see Penelope.
So much of Odysseus' story is revolving around these different sides of him, man versus monster, mercy versus ruthlessness. And so I really wanted an instrument that I would be able to use to illustrate that. The general idea of a guitar made so much sense to me because we could use like an acoustic guitar for his softer moments and an electric guitar for his more cunning or his more ruthless moments. And within those subsets of acoustic and electric guitar, there are other types. So we could have like a nylon string guitar versus an acoustic steel string guitar, or we could have a soft electric guitar versus a hard like drive electric guitar. And so because of that, we are able to have such different musical vibes that are all centered around the same character for Odysseus. So think of the difference between listening to Just a Man versus listening to the song Odysseus. Those are very different, but they both take advantage of the instrument guitar, whether it's acoustic or electric. I try very hard to make the music of Epic as intentional as I can, but occasionally there are moments that happen by chance. There's a moment in one of the earlier songs that came about by accident. In the first draft of Full Speed Ahead, I wanted a moment where Odysseus sang the lines "Full Speed Ahead" differently than how he was singing it before. I wasn't set on a specific melody, and so I was just recording different vocal melodies in hopes that I'd like one.
Full speed ahead, full speed ahead. Full speed ahead.
Now, when I'm recording vocal lines, I usually have to mute a lot of tracks, whether they're instrumental or vocal. And so once when I was trying to unmute a lot of instrumental tracks, I accidentally unmuted all of those vocal tracks. And the result is now one of my favorite moments in Full Speed Ahead.
Full speed ahead.
Now that moment is sung by Odysseus and the soldiers. Anyways, I know I talk a lot about the intentionality behind a lot of the aspects in Epic, but I think sometimes it's fun to celebrate some of the accidents too. I'd love to learn more about the writing process of the lyrics. Challenges, influences, parts you enjoyed the most? I got you! First off, very important thing to keep in mind is that everybody has their own process, and so my process might not be like another songwriter's, and that's totally okay. Okay, so when I write lyrics, I am always writing lyrics with a vocal melody in mind. I'm never just writing words, I'm thinking about the melodic notes that could be sung with those words. This is because I want those melodies to be either catchy or memorable in some way. So instead of me doing this, this life is amazing when you greet it with open arms. What actually happened was something like this.
This life is amazing. Ba, 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 da, 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 ba, ba, ba.
Now, when approaching this, there are several important things to keep in mind.
Number one.
The lyrics need to demonstrate Polites' philosophical belief. We know that Polites represents the polar opposite of ruthlessness. He has an idealized view of the world, which is what leads us to the term open arms.
Number two.
The placement of the words and the syllables need to make sense as though they were being spoken in a regular sentence. It's "this life is amazing," not "this life is amazing." There's a difference. I'm telling you, this life is amazing when you greet it with open arms. It sounds weird, right? All I did there was move all the syllables to the left by one.
Número tres.
The vocabulary and the density of syllables have to fit the character. Think about the difference in lyrics between Hermes and Zeus. Hermes has way more syllables per line than Zeus.
Consider this your one last chance to make it back home and abandon caution. Wash it away like the blood your hands have known. I know if you dance with fate, then I know you'll enhance your state.
Zeus, on the other hand, is slow with his delivery, has a commanding presence, and uses a lot more grandiose lyrics.
Pride is a damsel in distress.
So how can we make lyrics that are specific to Polites? Well, we know he's cheerful and he's energetic, but not so much that he's bouncing off the walls. We know he's kind and reassuring. That's why it leads to lyrics like,
No matter the place, we can light up the world. Here's how to start. Greet the world with open arms. Greet the world with open arms.
welcome.
Athena, badass in the arena.
So there are several moments in the show where Athena interacts with Odysseus' mind and they have an entire mental conversation in an instant. So the music represents this in two ways. Numero uno. Whenever she's giving a character, and by proxy the audience, information in an instant, we have a clock play as part of the music. Numero dos. We set the tempo of the music at 120 beats per minute, because then the beat is twice as fast as a second. So here we have a really cool example of how plot and character can help inform how the music should sound, because at 120 BPM, we're in techno territory.
Goddess of wisdom, master of war.
Last time I talked about Athena's ability to have entire mental conversations with someone in an instant. By the way, I've decided to call this power Quick Thought, and I'm really happy about that. However, there's another power that she tends to use in tandem with Quick Thought, and it's called projection. This power is represented by reverse chopped vocals, and you might have heard it in some of my other snippets. With this power, she can send projections of herself somewhere else, or she can cloak herself with projections to seem invisible.
And see you.
How can you see through my spell?
Ha! I was lying, and you fell for my bluff. Establishing these powers and finding a way to represent them musically is super important to me because it allows me to have a consistent and fun way to see them in action throughout the show, especially in God games. Athena! Every time Athena shows up, I really wanted it to feel mystical. I wanted it to feel magical, right? And no other instrument has ever made me feel like this than the piano. I think of the music from Kingdom Hearts and Spirited Away and the way that those make me feel. And since piano is the instrument that I play the most, I felt very confident in being able to give Athena this very iconic and unique sound. Okay, so I'm really happy about that song. Not just because of the character moments, but because there's a lot of little musical nuggets in the orchestration that I get really excited about. And I want to share them with you guys, so here we go. So at the beginning of the show, in the first song, which is called The Horse and the Infant, the first motif we hear is actually Odysseus' motif, and it's a muted electric guitar that plays this melody. Okay, now keep that in mind, because right after that, there's a second motif that's presented, which I call the danger is nearby motif. It's a legato string playing this melody. Okay, now the reason I bring up those two motifs is because they come back and serve a very important purpose in this song. First of all, the danger is nearby motif plays when Athena is hiding in her projections because Odysseus can't see her, and so he thinks that there's a potential threat close by.
Show yourself. I know you're watching me. Show yourself.
The melody then leaves once Odysseus is sure that Athena is not a threat to him. But it doesn't end there, because later in the song, when Odysseus and Athena are vibing with each other, you can literally hear their music vibing with each other. Check it out. So this is Athena's motif, which is a piano playing this melody at the beginning of the song. And this is her motif mixing with Odysseus' motif. You can hear them becoming closer through the music. On the first chorus of Warrior of the Mind, when Athena sings the word mind, she sings it with a single straightforward note. Warrior of the Mind. Later, when young Odysseus sings along with her, he harmonizes with her on the word mind and adds his own little riff. The harmony shows their connection, and the riff demonstrates Odysseus' youthfulness and his excitement over having this new mentor. Later on in that same chorus, Athena sings the riff that was introduced to her by Odysseus, but she sings it in the regular placement of her note, which is the harmony of Odysseus' riff. So instead of her singing mind, she's singing mind. They both harmonize and riff together, symbolizing the strength of their bond, and also showing that Athena is kind of warming up to Odysseus since she kind of lets go of that straightforward mind in order to do that riff version, mind. I'll show you guys how we make the voice of the Cyclops. So my dad actually got me this voice box back when I was like 16. And the point of it was to harmonize with yourself on the spot for live performances. For example, if I put a harmony like this one that says higher and lower, it'll sound something like this. Something bad. So the first thing I did was I took it so that the harmony is only playing the octave down from whatever I'm singing. Octave lower than me. But that doesn't eliminate my own voice from the recording. So what I used was a hard tune, and I used the style called gender bender, and I lowered it all the way, and it should sound something like this.
Who are you? Who goes there?
The first thing to understand is that all of the music here has to be low and imposing and scary. Very, very scary. Low, scary cellos. And then we gotta have some scary choirs. Also, since the Cyclops isn't human and is related to a god, we have some electronic synths in there. Okay.
My brothers, the rest of our fleet, they wait at the beach, and if we're defeated, their good is dead. That is who we're fighting. No backup, no chance for support, so draw out your sword. Our foe must be thwarted right here and now. Show me how great is your will to survive. 600 lives and shit.
Beginning.
So good, man.
Dude, with the mix.
Oh, dude, that sounds badass, dude. That sounds good.
This is Athena's motif. If you make some small adjustments to it so that it can be played on a triplet style beat, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then it sounds like this. But like without messing up. And this is actually what we hear in song 8, remember them?
Finish it.
No.
No? What good would killing do?
The reason why the triplets are significant is because later we find out the music of Poseidon is always in triplets. And this is a moment where Athena is being more on the ruthless side. However, if we wanted to have some fun with it, we could completely change the vibe of it by changing how I play the left hand. Check this out. Never changing how I play the right hand, not the speed, not where I emphasize certain notes, but the way I play the left hand totally changes the vibe, whether I'm playing it in the triplets version or the waltz version. Anyways, I just thought that was really cool and I thought you guys might enjoy that.
Here's a little PSA to my friends with the songwriting jitters. You gotta keep in mind that every song started somewhere. And so you might be wondering, Jorge,
Jimbo Bimbo.
what does this mean? It means that even a song like this originally started as something like this. So don't you dare forget, just because it ain't done don't mean you ain't great. I believe in you.
But later on in My Goodbye, when they're fighting, near the end of the song, when Athena sings goodbye, she sings it with the melody that she got from harmonizing with Odysseus in Warrior of the Mind. This is my goodbye. But in the last time that she sings goodbye, she sings it in that straightforward note, showing her disconnect from Odysseus and her reverting to who she was before she met him. This is my goodbye. One of the things that I'm particularly excited about in the Ocean Saga is the harmonies. You see, in other scenes, like in The Horse and the Infant, that has a lot of soldiers yelling and screaming, we've usually recorded all of those voices at the exact same time. But for the Ocean Saga, and for other parts of the show that have harmonies, I really wanted to record each of those vocals individually. And while at first it seems like a lot more work because you have to record each one of those vocals and edit each one of those vocals, the trade-off is that you then have the ability to highlight certain parts of the harmony. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm really enjoying these harmonies for Storm, Luck Runs Out, and Keep Your Friends Close. Like, check this out. This is one of the harmonies from Storm.
Storm, storm.
Or here's the same harmony but added the high part.
Storm, storm.
Or check out this harmony from Luck Runs Out. Oh, first off, listen to the how.
How
I love it. And then this
you
part.
rely on wit and people die on it. Whoa, how
Or even this harmony in Keep Your Friends Close.
never really know who you can trust.
But anyways, yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to hear the harmonies in the Ocean Saga. There's actually a really funny reason why Aeolus has an island in the sky in Epic, and I wanted to tell you guys. So Aeolus's island in the source material is described as a floating island. And for the longest time, I thought that that meant like an island that was like floating, like in the air. But I was so wrong. My understanding right now is that a floating island is an island that is not rooted to the bottom of the sea, and so it just floats on the surface of the water, going in whatever direction the current or the wind is taking it. But when I was writing Epic, I was like, yeah, it's a floating island. It's gonna be an island in the sky. Eurylochus.
How much longer till your luck runs out?
While many of the characters in Epic are musically defined by a specific instrument, Eurylochus doesn't fall into this category as of my current draft. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have ways to set him apart. See, in Epic, the fundamental disparity between Odysseus and Eurylochus is that while Eurylochus isn't always the bravest, he does develop a genuine love and care for his crewmates above all, whereas Odysseus develops a mindset of getting back to Penelope no matter what the cost. And so, Eurylochus is always accompanied by the voices of his crew members whenever he sings this chorus.
How much longer till your luck runs out?
Eurylochus is one of my favorite characters in the show. I feel like all the characters are my favorite characters in the show, but I really enjoy Eurylochus because his music has a lot of variety, because the thing that makes him distinct is not a specific musical instrument. It's the fact that he is often backed by the vocals of the other soldiers and crew. And so there's a lot of instrumental variety in his music. You'll see in Full Speed Ahead, he has this bass that plays a really fun bit. And then in Luck Runs Out, it's more piano driven. And without getting into spoiler territory, you see some other really cool instrument moments later on in the show where he adopts someone else's instrument. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
In the second verse of the song Luck Runs Out, the chord progression changes from this to this. This occurs right as Odysseus is trying to reason with Eurylochus as his friend rather than as his second in command.
Where is this coming from, my friend?
Have you ever thought about why this change in chord progression happens? Well, this same type of chord progression is one that we hear in an earlier song, Open Arms.
This life is amazing when you greet it with open arms. Where is this coming from, my friend?
I really like this moment because I think it is a very subtle but cool way to show that Polites still has a lasting effect on Odysseus at this point of the story. I wonder if moving forward there will be any other parts of the story where the music indicates that one character has had a lasting effect on another character. Probably not. Sometimes there are parts of Epic that I love just because they were earworms in my head before I ever wrote them. And what I mean by that is there were times where I would like listen to the song and in my head I'd always be like, oh, I wish I could add this little thing to that song. And what I'm about to show you is one of those things. So if you guys know Luck Runs Out, you'll know that the main melody of it goes like this. But in the second chorus, a new melody jumps in on top of that chorus, and it's like my favorite part of Luck Runs Out. And when you put that on top of the first melody that I showed you, you get essentially the second chorus of Luck Runs Out. I'm going to isolate just those melodies so you see what it sounds like, but I just love it so much. So I really like that part. Thank you guys for joining me on that. The one and only, the legendary JP. Hey, JP mixes and masters all of our tracks, which means... JP, what does that mean?
So basically you take all the audio stems from the vocals that we record and all the instrumental pieces that Jorge put together, and we basically mix them, we polish them, we make them all sound really good together until it sounds loud and bright and full and ready for the radio.
He makes everybody sound good.
Thank you for the concern, but brother, thank you for the concern, but
Please scoop into that a little bit.
thank you for the concern, but brother, I can assure you.
That whole sentence that you just heard there, that's not from one take. He's crossfading in between words and takes. It's crazy how you do that, man. Okay, so I'm really excited about that song, and I want to tell you guys about it because there were a lot of little technical aspects that went into creating the music of that song. Emphasis on the technical aspect. This video is going to be less about themes and motifs. So, without further ado.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Throughout the Wind God song, there's this recurring melody that's being played by these very breathy vocals, and it sounds like this. Now, the tempo of this song is 160 beats per minute, but what if I told you that the melody you just heard wasn't intended for 160 beats per minute? Let me show you what I mean by breaking these down individually and playing them with a metronome in the background. See, what's actually happening here is that this specific instrument in this sound library adjusts to the tempo of the overall project. And what I just played for you was when the project itself is at 120 beats per minute. If I were to change the project to 160 beats per minute and then played that instrument, this is what it would sound like. Okay, now stay with me. We're getting to the point. So now we're in a situation where I want to get the sound of this instrument at 120 BPM, but I want to use that sound in a project that's 160 BPM. So this is the sample that I use as the drum beat for the chorus of the Wind God song. And if I expand it, I can increase or decrease the tempo that the drum beat is being played at. But since my intended tempo is 4/3 of this tempo, or 160 BPM, then I make this beat go on for 3/4 of a set of measures. This way, while the project itself is still at 120 BPM, I can record the very breathy vocal sounds at 160 BPM. And just for fun, I'm going to show you what that looks like with and without the metronome playing at 120 BPM. Anyways, after I do all that, I can take the audio of that breathy vocal sound and then import it onto a project that is at 160 BPM. And that's how we're left with this. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Never really know who you can trust. I try to follow a very specific set of rules that allow us to have a consistent experience in the storytelling. For example, in Act 1, we are always following Odysseus, so there are no scenes where Odysseus is not present. This is so that we can experience those scenes from Odysseus' point of view and with the same amount of knowledge of the situation that Odysseus has. But what's fun about establishing rules in Epic is getting to break them later on in exciting ways. For example, I tried to make the writing in such a way that whenever you hear a character, you are actually hearing some form of dialogue, rather than them just singing their thoughts out loud. In Just a Man, when Odysseus is singing, he's not just saying his thoughts out loud, he is talking to the infant. That's why there are lines like, "How could I hurt you?" or "I look into your eyes," or "Close your eyes and spare yourself the view." But did you notice that in the bridge of Keep Your Friends Close, Odysseus just starts narrating the events of the past 9 days? "For 9 days I've stayed wide awake, trying to make it home with no storm or tidal wave." What's interesting is that as this scene plays out, we find out that Odysseus is asleep. Similarly to how it's hard to know when you're in a dream, it's hard to find out when Odysseus fell asleep because he is dreaming. If we rewind right before the bridge to the second chorus, we can actually hear the crewmates saying lines that are not directed straight towards Odysseus, and we can hear words from Aeolus. "Everything's changed since Polites." But what's fun here is that we blur the line between things that Odysseus is genuinely hearing as he's working on the ship, things that he's hearing the other crewmates saying, or maybe things that he's hearing Aeolus say, versus things that he is dreaming about that he may have heard before. And then this leads us to the moment of the wake up, wake up.
Odysseus of Ithaca! Do you know who I am.
One of the things I had the most fun doing when making the Ocean Saga was using the music to foreshadow and build up to Poseidon. I wanted it to feel like this big moment that everything was leading up to. I associate brass instruments with Poseidon, especially the trumpet. And so, in the beginning of the Ocean Saga, in the song Storm, I wanted to put a lot of brass instruments in there to signal that this storm was sent by Poseidon. This sound here, this is just a French horn being played very softly, and I added a lot of reverb to it. And so there's a whole lot of brass instruments here playing stuff. And then the trumpet comes in on top. Also, later on in the saga, once we get to keep your friends close, the moment that the wind bag is open, the orchestration is led by a brass ensemble. This is the melody I'm referring to. And the idea that the storm was sent by Poseidon is even called back to in Ruthlessness. When Poseidon's like, I mean, you totally could have avoided all this had you... all this had you just killed my son. Right after that, we can hear a brass ensemble led by a trumpet playing this melody.
Avoided all this had you just killed my son.
But no. If you remember, the melody for Storm is Storm. You totally could have avoided all this had you just killed my Storm. Because if he had just killed his son, he wouldn't have known his name, and then he wouldn't have sent the storm. And the reason this stuff excites me so much is because it allows us to give more information that the characters themselves don't have to say anymore. So like Poseidon never outright says, "It was I who sent the storm that blocked your path home, Odysseus." But we know it was him because of the fact that it shows up right after the Cyclops saga, but also because it's littered with brass instruments, and also because it comes back when Poseidon says you could have avoided this. I just love this stuff.
La música no miente.
There's a motif in Epic called the danger is nearby motif, and it's one of my favorites throughout the show. As the name suggests, it usually appears when danger is nearby in some way, shape, or form. Think of it as that little blue fairy, Navi, from The Legend of Zelda that's like, hey, watch out! Woo! The first time we hear this motif is in the very first song. Now, what's cool about this motif is I try to incorporate it in other parts of the show in sometimes obvious and other times not so obvious ways. And one of my favorites is in Poseidon's reveal, because the way Poseidon's name is sung is the danger motif. The Sidon of Poseidon follows the melody of the danger is nearby motif, because the danger is right there. Still don't believe me? Check this out. Poseidon, 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 Poseidon. If you go back and listen to the songs right now, you might find that the danger is nearby motif shows up more often than one might initially think. So the first thing I did was I took some ocean wave sounds and I made it so that they crash around the third beat of every measure. And this is what that sounds like. Next, when Poseidon shows up, I almost wanted to feel like a shark attack, so I took some inspiration from Jaws and added some high staccato strings, and this is what it sounds like. Now on top of that, a lot of my inspiration for writing musicals actually comes from video games, and I knew I wanted Poseidon to feel like a boss battle, so I took a page out of the book of one of my favorite video game villains, which is... And by that, I mean I just sang Poseidon's name in like 5 different operatic voices. And then I added this really loud, punchy brass because I thought it was cool. Put it all together, and this is what it sounds like. I can happily explain this. The theme of ruthlessness is the main theme of Epic, and we can see it throughout every single twist and turn in the story. In Epic, Odysseus has to make so many decisions, and every single one of those decisions places him on some kind of spectrum of ruthlessness. On one far end of the spectrum of ruthlessness, on the opposing end, would be his best friend Polites, who believes that we should always greet the world with open arms no matter what.
On the far other end is Poseidon, who believes to his core that ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. In Poseidon's mindset, he believes that if you're ruthless towards any problem that you confront, you'll be more efficient and able to eliminate it, and thus it will not come back to haunt you later. This is why Poseidon says, and so you totally could have avoided all this had you just killed my son. But no, it's not that he wants his son to die, it's that he lacks respect in Odysseus for not having what it takes to get the job done and save himself from Poseidon's wrath later. Because to Poseidon, if Odysseus had killed the Cyclops would not have been able to tell his dad what happened to him. And the reason why this theme of ruthlessness is so important is because it haunts Odysseus in every single song. The show literally begins with him having to decide whether he should spare the life of an enemy's son when there's a chance that that son might grow up to seek revenge on his family. And so while Odysseus spends a lot of his time questioning whether being ruthless would turn him from a man into a monster, Poseidon believes that Odysseus would just save himself all the trouble if he just accepted ruthlessness as a necessity of life. When mortal characters have background vocals in epic, those vocals come from actual characters who are present in that situation. For example, in song 10, Storm, when Odysseus says, "Storm," and then we hear those added vocals come from the soldiers in Odysseus' fleet. Here's another example. In song 11, Luck Runs Out, the vocals that are backing up Eurylochus come from the actual crewmates on that ship. The gods, however, do not have to follow this rule. They're gods, they can do whatever they want. To be specific, the background vocals in god music does not have to come from actual sources, actual characters who are present in the moment. For example, these background vocals in Not Sorry for Loving You. It's not like in the middle of this very vulnerable moment for Calypso, a random group of people appear and start singing, "I'm not sorry for loving you. I'm not sorry for loving you. I'm not sorry for loving you." Instead, those background vocals are simply part of Calypso's music because she's a goddess and she can do that. They serve as a sort of extension of her thoughts and feelings. Here's another example in My Goodbye. It's not like suddenly in the middle of this telepathic conversation between Athena and Odysseus, a bunch of people are suddenly able to hear it and they're just like... Those vocals are simply an extension of Athena in that moment. For the sake of specificity, whenever mortals have background or ensemble vocals, I try to refer to those vocals by the source of those vocals, like crew or soldiers. But if a god has background vocals with no character source, then I just refer to those as ensemble. Why am I telling you this, you may be asking? Because I try to use ensemble vocals as an extra tool to give us a little bit more insight on god characters. For example, in Warrior of the Mind, when Odysseus is singing Athena, badass in the arena, we can hear ensemble vocals on Athena and arena. And it's not like a random group of people just showed up to the scene like, "You are Athena, Athena, badass in the arena, unmatched queen of..." So if Odysseus isn't a god, and these vocals aren't coming from a character source, then the only explanation is that Athena is allowing these vocals to be there in that moment. Now, why would Athena allow those vocals there? I'll tell you. The answer is because Athena is vibing and is entertained by young Odysseus fanboying over her. And that's all fun, but you want to know another, more messed up example? In Song 13, Ruthlessness, after Poseidon destroys 11 of Odysseus' 12 ships, we hear this. Does a ripple become a tidal wave? 43 left under your command. Does a man become a monster? And to be clear, that's not coming from the soldiers. They're in shock. They're not suddenly like, "My comrades just perished to a god. Allow me to contemplate the philosophy of man versus monster." No. Poseidon brings back those lines through ensemble vocals with Odysseus. You know how petty you gotta be to be like that?
She turned on men from men to pigs. She changed them.
I've got all the power, yeah. I've got all the power. No, I'm not a player, I'm a puppeteer.
She's a queen. She's a goddess. She's a witch. She's a badass. To capture Circe's regality, a string ensemble plays this motif. And since the music of epic equates electronic elements with magic, a lot of the sounds that I make and a lot of the samples that I use for Circe's music have low frequency oscillators. Because Circe uses her natural charm in order to trick Odysseus' crew, the vibe I was going for in this first section of the music is what I like to call life of the party.
Circe! Circe is a great example of how an instrument choice can still feel unique when played in a different way. You see, Circe is strings. And now you might think, wait, isn't Penelope already the viola and kind of the string ensemble? Yes. With Circe, I lean more into the cello than I do the viola, but also, when it comes to the string ensemble and any of the string performances, rather than doing the long legato notes that you hear with Penelope, like da-da-da-da, we'll have these much shorter staccato notes with Circe. So you might hear like bum 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 bum. And so because I'm able to use the staccato notes from different string instruments, I'm able to morph her from friendly and puppeteer to serious and done for to persuasive, and there are other ways.
Hermes is in the song Puppeteer, but you don't need me to tell you that. The music tells you that. See, Hermes is musically represented by what I like to call harps and arps. And in Act 1, he's also represented by the lyre. These are incorporated into his music like this. Now, if you recall, in the second half of Puppeteer, Eurylochus tries to stop Odysseus from leaving to save his men from Circe.
Let's just cut our losses, you and I, and let's run.
Of course I'd like to leave now. Of course I'd like to run.
Now, when Odysseus responds, the orchestration changes and it incorporates a nylon string guitar. Now, this makes sense because this is an emotional moment between Odysseus and Eurylochus. But in the second half, the nylon string guitar is replaced by another instrument. And can you guess what instrument that is? It's the lyre!
Knowing everything we've done, there's no length I wouldn't go. If it was you I had to save, I can only hope you'd do the same.
And if I isolate the lyre, it sounds like this.
We've done, there's no length you I had to.
Hermes was eavesdropping on the conversation between Odysseus and Eurylochus, which is why he begins the song Wouldn't You Like with
Must say, what a brilliant speech you gave.
This is how I made the music for Hermes, the messenger god, specifically in Act 1. Almost every major character in Epic has a specific instrument or sound designated to them. For Hermes, I like to call it harps and arps. Arps being short for arpeggios. Fun fact, in Act 1, Hermes also has a lyre in his music, but in Act 2, he no longer has the lyre, and the lyre can be heard in Apollo's music. Can you guess why? Anyways, in a show that's full of bloodshed and death, Hermes is a character that allows me to have some levity, which means I get to have a little more fun making his music. So I like to make his songs a little groovy. We got this bass in there that goes like boom, 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 boom. And then we got this groovy piano that's all like... Add some groovy drums and a fun vocal line, and you get this.
She can turn you to an animal that'll end up on her plate. She can all but make you fall in love like you're on your 100th day. She can conjure up a monster that'll grind you to the bones. She has all the ways to haunt you when you take her out alone. Ooh.
I'm just messing with you, he doesn't do that.
Hermes! So whenever I'm talking about Hermes, in terms of his instruments, I always like to refer to it as harps and arps, but that's really more specific to the song Dangerous than to Wouldn't You Like. In Wouldn't You Like, I wanted him to have a lyre because of that myth where he gives the lyre to Apollo, and so I thought it'd be cool if the first time we see Hermes, he has a lyre in his music, and then the second time he no longer has that lyre, he has a harp instead.
Oftentimes, my fellow friends will ask me, Mr. Jorge, Mr. Jimbo Pimbo, Mr. Jalapeno, which of the songs of the Circe saga is the one you are most excited for? But you fail to realize that is like asking me which of my chihuahuas gets to play in the sink. The answer is all of them. However, while I do not have favorite songs from the Circe saga, I do have favorite moments. And one of my favorite moments is this harmony from Hermes' song, Wouldn't You Like?
Would you like to have some of the magic? Wouldn't you like your outcome preferred? Deep in the night, the fight can be tragic. I'll help you conquer her.
You might be wondering, Mr. Jalapeno, what is it about this moment that makes it one of your favorite? And it is the convergence of these two melodies. Number one.
Wouldn't you like to have some of the magic? Wouldn't
Wouldn't you like your outcome preferred?
Number 2.
Wouldn't you like to have some of the magic? Wouldn't you like your outcome preferred?
And when you put them together, you get these.
Wouldn't you like to have some of the magic?
That was joke. But you actually get these. They start together, but then they separate.
Wouldn't you like to have some of the magic? Wouldn't you like your outcome preferred?
It is crunchy like a Tootsie Roll. Crunchy and punchy.
Wouldn't you like to have some of the magic? Wouldn't you like your outcome preferred?
Crunchy and punchy.
Then you're done for. Anything I don't approve, then you're done for. I could put a spell on you and you're done for. Well, you get to run or soon you'll be done for.
Circe is one of the coolest characters in Epic, in my humble opinion. See, throughout the show, we've been seeing Odysseus always having another plan up his sleeve. We see how he tricks Athena in Warrior of the Mind. We see how he tricks the Cyclops during the Cyclops saga. We see him escape Poseidon using the wind bag. And so it's so cool to see him go up against someone like Circe, who is very charismatic and very witty, very clever, has magic spells, is really pretty. But she's not invincible, and she knows that. She might not be an up-close melee fighter, and so she has to design her tactics around that. And I think at its core, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy Circe so much, because we get to see those different sides of her throughout the Circe saga. In Puppeteer, we get to see her being sort of the life of the party, and she's all like, oh my gosh, come inside. But then she tricks all of the guys into eating her food and then turns them all into pigs. And then later, when Odysseus calls her out on it, she gets into serious mode, which is really, really exciting too. That, and also, she's got a chimera. To be more specific, she can summon a chimera. But anyways, and I'll explain that more in another video, but right now, I just want to show you the roar for this chimera. I got a couple different samples of animals yelling. Like this one is an elephant, this is a bear, this is a lion, this is another lion. And when you put them all together, it makes this really cool sound. It's like this. In the context of the song, it sounds like this. You know how cool that is? That she starts singing Done For, and then a friggin' chimera comes in. Also, in Puppeteer, she's got this really cool riff, and it's like, go ahead and rest wherever you like. But it's like faster. Like. It's so hard. Like. Go ahead and rest wherever you like. Something like that.
Go ahead and rest wherever you like.
It's so cool. My heart, because it's one of the best examples in Epic of magic being musically represented by electronic elements. And I think it's especially cool in this song because we get to hear Odysseus with some magic. In the song Wouldn't You Like, Hermes presents Odysseus with a flower that allows him to mimic Circe's power. Now, as you guys know, most of the main inspirations for Epic were video games and anime. And Done For pulls inspiration from Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I kid you not, and this is in the script, Circe summons a giant chimera to fight Odysseus. But that's not even the craziest part, because remember, Odysseus temporarily can use the same magic power. Now here's his electric guitar motif, which appears right as he's telling Circe that he ate the magic flower, but he's not using the magic yet. Right now is just a normal electric guitar. But remember, what's specific about Circe's music is that she uses a lot of LFOs, which stands for low frequency oscillators. Which sounds like her music is going in and out like wah wah wah, like this. Now keep that in mind, because if we go back to Odysseus in the section where he actually powers up with the magic and summons his own monster, his electric guitar has LFOs. And so when he summons his own monster to fight Circe's chimera, which by the way, he summons a cyclops, which I think is really funny, it sounds like this. Anyways, little things like that get me really excited. Does this melody sound familiar to you? If it does sound familiar, it's because my rendition of Circe is slightly inspired by the French opera Carmen, in which the main character Carmen uses seduction as a way to get out of a tough situation. And so that melody that I showed you that serves as the foundation of that song for Circe is directly inspired by the melody from Habanera in Carmen. Now, what's really exciting about this moment is that while Odysseus and Circe are having their own intellectual face-off, the music is telling us that Circe has one more trick up her sleeve. I've spoken to you about how I try to use melodic motifs instrument choices, styles of singing, or genres, rhythms, or a combination of all of those things or more in order to help us identify characters or themes in epic. And I want to show you an example of how this can be very simple yet effective. Here I've got a section of Puppeteer. You might recognize it. But I want to focus on two specific elements. First is the staccato strings that go like this. And second is this kick drum that has this rhythm. Together, they sound like this. Now, that combination you just heard, which is 1, the staccato string that goes like dun 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 dun, and 2, a kick drum that goes boom, 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 is present in all of Circe's songs. And so that one simple combination gives us a level of consistency in the music of each of Circe's songs, despite Circe acting very differently in each of her songs. Let's move on to Circe's second song, Done For. Remember this section? Just like in Puppeteer, we can find the combination of the staccato strings playing dun 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 dun, as well as a kick drum going doom, 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 doom. Here are the strings. And here's the kick drum. And together, they sound like this. And even though the strings are playing twice as fast relative to the kick drum as they were in Puppeteer, that same combination is still present. Now let's go to Circe's third and final song, There Are Other Ways. This section is at the end of the song. Do you see where I'm going with this? Just like before, we're able to find the staccato strings playing this melody, as well as the kick drum playing this beat. And together, they sound like this. So, each of Circe's songs have the same combination of staccato strings playing the same melody, along with a kick drum playing the same beat. And that combination is synonymous with Circe. And so that's a more simple musical tool that allows us to identify a character. And so I hope that you guys find this very encouraging. I know that when I'm writing music or when I'm writing a song, I get very intimidated because there are a lot of terms and aspects in music theory that I'm not very familiar with. And it's very important to learn those things. And at the same time, I think it is still beneficial and very fun to explore music, even if you're like me and you don't have the strongest music theory background. Because sometimes the simplest tool can be one of the most effective ones. First, I found some audio of people screaming and I stretched it out so it sounds extremely scary and distorted. Then, to help the music match the atmosphere, I found some audio of some creepy breathing sounds and I used them as part of the beat. Next, some heavy vocals that come in and out to help raise the stakes. And now, for reasons I cannot spoil, I bring back some lyrics from earlier in the show. All I hear are screams. Put it all together, and this is what it sounds like.
All I hear are screams. Every time I dare to close my eyes.
So the interesting thing about the Underworld saga is that even though it's the shortest saga in the musical, it's also one of the most difficult ones. Mostly because of Song 18, The Underworld. If you ask any of the cast members which of the songs was their least favorite to record, there's a pretty decent chance they say The Underworld. And it's because the ensemble harmonies in that are so much. One of my favorite moments in particular is this moment here.
And why would you let the cyclops live when ruthlessness is mercy?
And so sometimes we'll have a person record different parts of that 5-part harmony. And so every single recording with every single person who lent their voice as an ensemble in the song, we have to edit each of those and mix and master all of that. That adds up. That could be like 30 different vocal takes across like 6 different people for that one moment. Or like, check out this harmony.
But in the underworld, your past is always close behind.
On another front, I had wanted to reorchestrate some of the later moments in No Longer You. I want to show you guys something cool in the Underworld saga, but I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to show it to you. I might make weird noises though.
Nothing's what it seems, but in
I am the monster, rah rah rah.
The place where we can light up the world. Here's how to start. Greet the world with open arms. Greet the world with open arms.
Odysseus' mom's melodic motif is the same as Odysseus' melodic motif, except it is played on a piano instead of a guitar, and it is played in major instead of minor. Let me show you. So, this is Odysseus' melodic motif. You hear it all over the show whenever Odysseus is using his cunning or he's planning something. But if you take that same melody and put it onto a piano, it sounds like this. But now, if you turned it from minor to major, you have Odysseus' mom's melodic motif. And it sounds like this.
Odysseus, when you come home, I'll be waiting. Even if you're the last thing I see, I'll be.
Odysseus, when you come home, I'll be
Since Tiresias is a mortal that has clairvoyance, his music is mostly orchestral but has a subtle synth bass in the background. Since Tiresias is much older than Odysseus, his style of music is much older as well. In other words, time for a waltz.
I know you're watching me, Mason.
Okay, so I'm working on some updates to the orchestration in the Underworld saga, and I'm very happy with how it is coming out, and I wanted to show you guys. Okay, check this out. 1, 2, 3. That's all I can show you for now. And part of why I love this so much is because throughout the song we kind of condition the listener to expect the melody to keep on playing on like the first beat of every measure. So like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But then at the end of like this section, that melody continuation, at least the bass part of it, it's like delayed, right? So we have like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
I love that. I love that so much.
Can you do a full breakdown of No Longer You and the hidden melodies and motifs and choirs? Yes, I can. So the first thing I want to get out of the way is, what are the voices chanting in that second chorus of No Longer You? And it's this: siren song, Scylla throat, mutiny, lightning bolt, hurt Poseidon, kill all the suitors for love. Siren song, suffering, Scylla throat, Scylla, mutiny, lightning bolt, Thunderbringer, hurt Poseidon, 600 strike, kill all the suitors for love, Odysseus. Now let's break down what the prophet sees in this chorus. Also, before I go into these, I just want to say, if you guys interpreted some of these differently, that's totally fine. I just want you guys to enjoy the song and have a good time. I see a song of past romance. We see this with the siren impersonating Penelope in Suffering. I see the sacrifice of man. We see this in Scylla when Odysseus sacrifices 6 of his men to Scylla. I see portrayals of betrayal. We see this in the song Mutiny in 2 ways. 1, Eurylochus sees Odysseus' actions as a betrayal, and 2, Odysseus sees Eurylochus' then mutiny as a betrayal. Betrayal and a brother's final stand. Now you could attribute this to mutiny, or you could attribute this to the end of Thunderbringer right before Zeus's lightning bolt hits, when Eurylochus and the rest of the crew are trying to take Odysseus down with them. I see you on the brink of death. Sorry, my voice is gone. We see Odysseus on the edge of a cliff in Love in Paradise. I see you draw your final breath. We see this at the end of Get in the Water when Odysseus metaphorically dies and is reborn as a monster. But it's no longer you. Odysseus is a monster now. Another cool thing is that in the second verse of No Longer You, we hear this choir vocal singing the melody of the danger motif when Tiresias is saying, I see your palace covered in red. We hear a choir going, ah, 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 ah. This is because in Song 38, Odysseus, when Odysseus is slaughtering all the suitors, the background vocals that are singing the words Odysseus, they're singing it in the danger motif. So we hear Odysseus, 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 Odysseus. Another fun thing that I'd like to think about every now and then is in the beginning when Tiresias says, there is a world where I help you get home, but that's not a world I know. I like to imagine that as like Tiresias seeing the other versions of the Odyssey, like the original, like the Odyssey, right? Or other interpretations of that. A little multiverse theory. This is irrelevant right now, but this might be relevant if I ever do a fighting game for Epic. And then at the end of No Longer You, we get a direct foreshadowing moment to the end of Song 38, Odysseus. From an audio standpoint, we hear Odysseus, which is exactly what we hear at the end of Song 38, Odysseus. And from a visual standpoint, Odysseus sees this red-eyed monster-looking thing in the underworld, not realizing he's looking at himself.
For that is the monster that slays all the suitors.
No Longer You is one of the most important songs in Epic, and it's because it's the final straw before Odysseus changes in the Act 1 closer, Monster. The news that Tiresias gives Odysseus in the second verse of No Longer You is so perturbing to Odysseus that it forces him to reevaluate all of his choices and the choices of his enemies and really confront himself. And so I wanted to create orchestration that captures that gravitas in the second chorus. To do that, I had to get a little creative. First, I added this organ that sounds like this. That's not what it sounds like. Then I added what I call spiraling strings. In reality, it's a mixture of piano, strings, and organ, but the name sounds cool. And the way I do that is that, let's say I have the organ playing this melody. I'll have the piano and the strings play that exact same thing at the exact same time, which gives us this. I also changed the chord progression of the chorus from what it was in the first chorus. So the first chorus has a chord progression like this. I see a song of past romance. the second chorus, the chord progression is much more menacing. It's more like, I see the song of past romance, I see the sacrifice of man, I see portrayals of betrayal and a brother's final stand. Now if you couple that with the spiraling strings and have the organ and the choirs do those chords, it comes out something like this. Some fun here. But it's no longer you. And so what's really cool about that second chorus is that the chords are rising while the strings are like spiraling downwards. So I feel like, it's like the tension is rising while Odysseus is spiraling.
Yes.
And so now, after Odysseus witnessed his best friend die, his mentor left him, he's traumatized by seeing what he sees in the underworld, and Tiresias gives him the worst news ever, Odysseus is now ready for the final song of Act 1.
Monster.
Monster.
Monster. Cyclops struck with guilt when he kills. Is he up in the middle of the night? Or does he end my mental avenging?
As you may know, we recently had to cut the Act 1 closer song called Monster because it was too dark. So I've been working on a new version of it, and I'm really happy with how it's coming out. So I want to show you guys.
I am the monster, rah rah rah. I am the monster, rah rah rah. I am the monster, I am the monster, I am the monster, rah rah rah.
One of my favorite things about the song Suffering from the Thunder Saga is that the biggest indicator that we have that this is not Penelope is that there is no viola in the entire song. For those of you who don't know, the viola is Penelope's instrument, first established in the song The Horse and the Infant. Specifically, the first time that we hear her name.
Penelope.
You hear that viola in the background coupling the melody? And so I thought it'd be really cool if in Suffering, one of the biggest indicators that this is not actually Penelope is if she doesn't have Penelope's instrument in her music. Part 1, Suffering. Okay, so in the Act 1 closer, Monster, we hear Odysseus say he will become the monster. And so I really wanted us to see that going back into Act 2. And I saw the perfect opportunity for this with the sirens. You see, in Act 1, we never really get to see or hear Penelope other than a quick moment in the dream sequence and Keep Your Friends Close. And I do this because if Odysseus doesn't get to see Penelope, neither do we. And so starting Act 2 with the voices of Penelope and Odysseus reestablishes our characters' wants and gives us a glimpse into another side of Odysseus' personality. But what makes this intro to Act 2 so different from most of Act 1 is that it's one of those times where we're not given the same amount of information as Odysseus. I really wanted to give us as little context as possible going into the song Suffering. I wanted the experience to be, what is going on? Where are we? Why is Penelope here? Daughter? Since when is Odysseus scared of water? What? There are subtle cues in the song, such as the lack of a viola for Penelope's instrument, and the lines such as me and our daughter when Odysseus doesn't have a daughter, because Song 21, Suffering, is designed in such a way that it makes the listener think they figured out what's going on. And so we, as the audience, get tricked the same way Odysseus tricks the siren later on. And it's almost like we're on the receiving end of Odysseus' cunning. While listening to the song Suffering, it's very easy to have a moment of, aha, I figured it out, it's a siren. We are lulled into a false sense of security because we think we have figured out the entire picture, until we get to Different Beast. Now, something else I really love about the song Suffering is that we get to see lines from Odysseus that apply not only to Penelope, but also to the siren version of Penelope, because they are laced with double meanings. For example, when Siren Penelope asks, "Don't you miss me?" and Odysseus responds with "More than you know," he is not only saying he misses Penelope more than Penelope knows, but also this siren has no idea who she's messing with, because Odysseus misses Penelope more than the siren knows, and she has no idea that Odysseus is willing to do anything to get home to Penelope, as we see at the end of the Thunder Saga. Another example of this kind of line is the line that goes like, "Ooh, for you I would die, but can't you let me stay dry?" Because not only is Odysseus saying he would die for Penelope, he is also saying that if he were to get in the water for you, you being the siren, he would die. Ooh, for you I would die. I wanted there to be a massive difference in tone from the song Suffering and the songs that came right before and right after it. So a very difference between monster and Suffering and different beast.
I can tell you exactly what I put in the song.
So the reason that I believe this song is so catchy is because the vowel that ends each of Odysseus's lines in the chorus is the same vowel that begins each of Penelope's lines in the chorus, and vice versa. But I'd be suffering, trying to float the whole time, would take the suffering from you. As good as that sounds, right here I'm just fine, can take the suffering from. So not only is it a sort of call and receive, but it's also continuous because of that connecting vowel sound. This is how the siren's powers work in Epic. Before I begin, this is just how I imagined the siren's powers working when I was writing the songs Suffering and Different Beast in Epic. Okay, put your seatbelts on, because this is a wild ride! That sounded cooler in my head. So, in Epic, when a siren sings and their song reaches your ears, the siren gains access to your memories. Often, a siren will use aspects from the memories of their targets to lure their targets into the water so that they can drown them and eat them. Once their song spell has effectively reached your ears, their spell is so effective that it is impossible for any mortal to resist it. But all of this hinges on the siren's song reaching your ears effectively for long enough for the spell to take place. So if they catch you off guard, it's over. If they just pop up out of the water and surprise you, you're donezo. Also, covering your ears isn't enough. It needs to be something that can really block it out. But this does not happen in the Act 2 opener, Suffering, because as we learn in the next song, Different Beasts, Odysseus and his crew were prepared for this by putting beeswax in their ears. So if a siren is able to access your memories when their song enters your ears like a little music worm, what do you think happens when you're unable to hear them effectively enough for their spell to take place properly? The information that they receive from your memories is not 100% correct, and so they start messing up. This is why the siren says, "Come play with me and our daughter, and let's..." Even though Odysseus doesn't have a daughter, he has a son. And this is musically represented by the siren not having Penelope's instrument, a viola, in the entirety of the song Suffering. But in the process of pretending to be someone who Odysseus cares about deeply, the siren does have another important instrument in the song Suffering. A mallet. Do you remember anybody else who had mallet-type instruments in their song? I'll give you a hint. It's someone Odysseus cared about. I am so sorry, but also I'm not. So even the siren's music confuses instruments between people Odysseus cares for. But wait, there's more! You might have recognized another motif in the song that seems slightly out of place. And you're right. When Odysseus asks the siren how he can evade Poseidon chasing him, the siren sings the melody from the first song in the show when Zeus explains to Odysseus about Astyanax, the infant, chasing him. He will burn your house and throne. He'll find you wherever you go. He will chase you high and low, so find a place he'd never go. What breaks my heart, though, is that even though the siren is getting some things wrong, she's also getting a lot of things right. Because to Odysseus, in his eyes, he is seeing the love of his life, Penelope, swimming in the water below him, inviting him to jump in. But in his heart, and in his mind, he knows it's not her. Song 21, Suffering, is designed in a way so that we, as the audience, have something to figure out, which is that whoever Odysseus is talking to, it's not actually Penelope. And when we have figured that out, we think we have the full scope of the situation, and so we think, Odysseus, get out of there, until we reach Song 22, Different Beast, which yanks us out of that with the information that not only is Odysseus talking to a siren, He knew the entire time and he planned for it. I really love that we get a similar feeling of surprise that the siren gets when she is shot with a bow and arrow by Odysseus. There's this awesome electronic melody that plays right at the beginning of different beasts that goes like ba-da-da-da-ba-ba. And I associate it with Odysseus being particularly monstrous when encountering a more magical being like a siren. And I really enjoy this because we usually associate Odysseus's more ruthless or monstrous side with his electric guitar, but in this song he is also musically a different beast, and I think that's really fun. And this melody will come back one more time. I think it's one more time. I particularly love this moment in the second verse where Odysseus straight up explains to the siren how they got into the situation, his whole master plan behind this, because we get to see Odysseus's cockiness and pride while also giving out that exposition in a totally in-character way. Now, like I said in my last video about suffering, I really wanted us to see Odysseus's more monstrous side coming into Act 2, because we really need to see that character change in Odysseus, which leads to the cut off their tails moment. One thing that was really important to me in making the song was creating an atmosphere that was eerie and slightly unsettling. So the first thing I did was take this chord progression but I switched that last chord from minor to major so that it throws us off. When I mix a guitar and a piano to play it, it sounds like this. Now my favorite part, video game inspiration. For this song, I was inspired by Jin's theme from League of Legends, specifically the usage of a really fast fiddle. And so I wanted to use a fiddle in Scylla's song because it felt so urgent and almost like we couldn't comprehend what was happening in the moment. And it just sounds badass. Now, without getting too into it, Scylla in Epic has some form of telepathy, which opens the door for me to incorporate electronic elements in her music. And so I use an electronic synth, or a lead, which doubles the melody that Scylla is singing, and that allows the melody to be catchier and stay in your head longer. When I say double the melody, I mean that it's playing the exact same notes as the singer, in this case Scylla, is singing. Happy about this song, really excited. It's one of my favorites in Epic. And there's a detail in this song that I thought was really cool that I wanted to share with you guys. In the second half of Scylla's chorus, there's a harmony. However, that harmony is not created by having the main singer sing the harmonizing lines like most harmonies are. What we do instead is we take Scylla singing the regular vocal line, which sounds like this. And then what we do is we duplicate that vocal take several times. After duplicating it, we pitch every single note in each of those duplications to a harmonizing note. That looks something like this. And now if you listen to that duplication alone, it sounds really weird and robotic-y and synthetic. Now, when isolated, each of those duplications might sound very irregular, but when you combine them, they give Scylla this really cool and inhuman feeling in her vocals. This is what all the duplications sound like when combined with the main vocal melody.
Us do what it takes to survive. Give up your honor and faith. Live up your life as a wraith. Die in the blood where you bathe. We must do what it takes to survive.
And now put it back in the music and it all comes to life.
holds a very special place in my heart amongst all the characters in Epic because I just find him so musically interesting. As many of you might know, Eurylochus's instrument per se is actually the voices of the crewmates, right? That's why in songs like Luck Runs Out we hear the how you rely on wit, all those harmonies, all those extra voices, or in his first appearance in Full Speed Ahead when he says 600 men and we immediately hear the crew double him saying 600 men. It is really interesting to me because music-wise, he almost has a different instrument in each of his appearances. Like this bass that appears when we first hear him in Full Speed Ahead. We don't hear that again for him. Or this piano and kick drum combo from Luck Runs Out. I just love it. It feels like he's almost like lost as a character. Like he doesn't quite know his way. Other than the voices of the crew, which he does his best to protect. But what I love about him not having an instrument is that it opens an opportunity for additional storytelling in an event that we give him an instrument, especially if it's an instrument that isn't his. In this song, Eurylochus tries to take control. He tries to assume Odysseus's position. And to further highlight that, can you guess which instrument plays when Eurylochus pulls out his sword against Odysseus? Not only that, the Danger is Nearby motif is playing. And though that electric guitar motif is not Odysseus's, the instrument is. But you know what melody that is from? The moment before Odysseus and all of these other soldiers jump out of the Trojan horse right at the beginning of the show at the Horse and the Infant. And that stuff is so cool. I love it. It like gives us an extra little glimpse into characters' thoughts and motivations behind any given moment in a scene. Because perhaps Eurylochus is lost, and which is why he doesn't have an instrument. But he does find purpose in protecting the crew, which is why his instrument is the voices of the crew. Have you noticed that certain moments Eurylochus goes to more rhythmic speech rather than singing? And have you noticed what is the correlation between these moments, especially given the events that occur in the middle of the Thunder Saga? I love Eurylochus so much as a character, and I will admit I have thought about making a short sort of origin story for him that would be like canon to the universe of Epic. But yeah, just thoughts I have in my head. I don't want to say too much right now because but I think I get very inspired by him. I have all this like lore for him in my head, and I think it might be cool if one day to sort of bring that to life. Maybe like a short saga or something. Who knows? A prequel, DLC, I don't know. Pausing is a tool that I use in several key moments of Epic. Captain?
Enough.
I find pausing to be especially effective in highlighting the gravity of a situation in storytelling. Since there are many components that go into a song in Epic, it can be easy for a listener to miss certain details. Pausing can force certain details to the forefront and give them extra weight. Here's an example of a moment in Epic that has a pause.
We didn't take a stand, we just ran! Say something!
I can't!
Then you have forced my hand.
In this example, the pause is significant because it allows us to sit in Eurylochus's realization that his accusation towards Odysseus was correct. Now let's listen to it without the pause.
We didn't take a stand, we just ran!
Say something!
I can't!
And you have forced my hand.
Without the pause, it's a little bit less clear how much of an impact Odysseus' words have on Eurylochus. Can you think of another moment in Epic that has a pause? Here's one of my favorites.
Since you claim you're so much wiser, why is your life spent all alone? You're alone!
The first thing I did was I found 3 different samples of thunder sounds. I aligned them so that they strike at the exact same time. Then I merged those audio files and I scrunched it up so I can have a precise lightning strike that's part of the beat. Then I used the drum pack that has a lot of booming sound so it can help match Zeus's personality. Some choirs because they always elevate the tension. You might have noticed that a lot of the characters in Epic are represented by a specific instrument, and Zeus's is this awesome electronic brass. And we have a sick electric guitar shred in there. Put it all together and this is what we get. So when writing this song, I had three main objectives.
Number 1.
I needed to establish Zeus as an imposing force.
Number 2.
I needed to hint at how Zeus is going to affect Odysseus in the near future.
Number 3.
I needed to understand Zeus's mindset as a character. So this is how I do that. To establish that Zeus is far beyond these puny mortals, I don't even have him address them or acknowledge them until his second verse. Zeus shows up and just goes on his own little monologue, and all Odysseus and his crew can do is listen. In his monologue, however, he gives a situation in which a person's true nature is revealed once you apply a lot of pressure. I wonder what other character he's gonna do that to. And finally, to understand Zeus's mindset as a character, the metaphor that he creates is one in which he overpowers what he calls a damsel in distress named pride.
Thunder, bring her through the ringers.
I know life and fate are scary, but I wanna be legendary.
Telemachus, like Polites, is a source of light in the show, and so all his music has to be very upbeat and bright. Since he develops a friendship with Athena, his main instrument is an indie piano. Now here's a cool opportunity to have some familial traits in the music, because since his dad is Odysseus and his mom is Penelope, we can have some guitar and some legato strings in his song. And since he's secretly being watched over by Athena, we can dabble in some subtle electronics. Specifically that bass that goes like wah 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 wah. Match all that with a bouncy beat and this is what we get.
I know life and fate are scary, but I wanna be legendary.
Telemachus. So for Telemachus, his supporting instruments, as in the instruments that you might hear a lot in the background of his music, particularly in Legendary, are the acoustic strummed guitar and the string ensemble, which suggests that he is the son of Odysseus, guitar, and Penelope, viola and strings, right? However, I wanted to have Telemachus' primary instrument suggest that he's being watched over by Athena, while also allowing Telemachus to have some of his own vibe in his instrument. And so I wanted a bright instrument along the lines of a piano, which is why I went with the indie piano, which is the sound you hear with bum 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 bum. That's the indie piano.
Die, little wolf, die, don't you know it's fight or...
So the first time we encounter the suitors is actually from Telemachus' perspective. And since it's pretty late in the show to establish a new main antagonist, I wanted to give their music a sense of familiarity. And so there are two major characteristics of their music.
Number 1.
We've got this very grungy electric guitar, because they're trying to replace Telemachus' dad.
Número 2.
They've got trumpets. This is because since this section is told from the perspective of Telemachus, I wanted to give him the same feeling when he's confronted by the suitors as Odysseus gets when he's confronted by Poseidon. Antinous in Epic is a cold and calculated man who is tired of his life passing him by while the throne is empty and the queen has stood alone for 20 years. He has had enough of waiting around and is now willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants, which in this case are Penelope and the throne. And for some reason to break Telemachus' bones. Also, Antinous in Epic is not a particularly classy person. He's more of a nitty-gritty, down and dirty type. The reason this is important is because even the pronunciation of words affects how we will view Antinous. So we're not looking for fight little wolf fight. Instead, we're looking for fight little wolf fight. It's a minor change, but the way we say the words really affects the performance. The song will be fine, the duet between Telemachus and Athena. Athena is singing to Telemachus about his dad, Odysseus, but he doesn't know that. Athena sings a melody that is similar to the riff that Odysseus did with her in Warrior of the Mind. Different call, if I made a different call, la 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 la. Not only that, but she's singing the harmony of what would be the Warrior of the Mind melody in this key. She is singing Odysseus's part. If I made a different call. She's singing that melody as opposed to this. If I made a different call, mind. She's singing Odysseus' part because she longs for their friendship and is still holding on to some of that youthful energy he had when they were friends. But then she goes back to singing her harmony, which she would be singing all the time if Odysseus was present to sing his harmony along with her. Maybe he'd be fine. But it goes further than this, because when Telemachus starts singing along, he starts off by singing Odysseus' harmony. So sonically, Telemachus is filling that friendship role that Athena longs for. But then when he gets to the part of, I don't think he'll mind, he is doing his own riff on the riff that Athena did, harmonizing with the riff that Odysseus made when he first heard Athena sing mind in a straight note. First he starts off by just adding little like timing differences like mind, but then he starts adding these different notes, mind. But then at the end of the song, when he and Athena are singing at the same time, he sings a new harmony. Maybe to fall is to learn one way. Showing that all of these harmonies can coexist, just like the friendship between Odysseus and Athena. And Telemachus encourages Athena to go help her friend, not knowing that he's referring to his own dad. And the fact that Telemachus riffs on a melody that was just introduced to him is reminiscent of young Odysseus riffing on the melody that was introduced to him in Warrior of the Mind. Song 5, Warrior of the Mind. Athena sings the word mind with a straight tone. Warrior of the Mind. Later in Song 5, Odysseus sings a harmonized riff of this. Mind. Later in Song 5, Athena sings the riff with the harmonizing melody. Mind. Final chorus of Song 9, My Goodbye. Athena sings goodbye with the harmonized riff that she did with Odysseus from Warrior of the Mind. This is my goodbye. Final chorus of Song 9, Athena sings goodbye with a straight note, just like she did at the beginning. This is my goodbye. Many years later, Song 28, We'll Be Fine. Athena sings the harmonized riff that Odysseus used to sing. Maybe if I made a different call. Later in Song 28, Telemachus sings a harmonized riff on the word mind. I don't think he'll mind. Later in Song 28, Telemachus sings a new harmony showing that all the harmonies can coexist. Maybe to fall is to learn one way. And it all started from this one moment in Warrior of the Mind, Warrior of the Mind. And it brought us to this beautiful moment here in We'll Be Fine. If not his friend, then mine. And what's so beautiful about the song We'll Be Fine is that the goddess of wisdom is getting advice, is getting wisdom from what is basically a kid. He's so naive and so youthful, but it is wisdom nonetheless. And it's one of my favorite moments in Epic. Another way we break the rules is the change of the character's perspective in which we are experiencing the story. Since all of Act 1 is from Odysseus' experience, any change from that is a significant event. As you'll see later in Act 2, we end up getting to play as Telemachus, seeing how he tackles certain situations and obstacles, in contrast to Odysseus. Another fun switch-up comes from one of my favorite moments in Act 2, which I like to call the time dive, when Athena dives through Odysseus' memories to find out his location. What's cool about this is that we get just a little glimpse into Athena's thoughts and feelings surrounding Odysseus. Calypso! So when I think of Calypso, I think of her beautiful island, I think of the beach, and I think of these very soft-sounding ocean shores, these waves coming in and going. And so I really wanted that sort of soft, tropical-sounding instrument in her music. And so the hand pan made so much sense to me. I love how it sounds, you know. I think you can get so much emotion out of it without making it super loud and banging in your ears like, I don't know, Thunderbringer. Number 1. We got some hand pans and some steel drums. Numero 2. We gotta set the scene with some ocean waves and some seagulls. Then we have to add some elements of salsa and reggaeton in there. Some choir vocals because Calypso's presence is so heavenly. I wanted to incorporate some aspect of actual Calypso music. And if I understand correctly, this rhythm is a crucial part of that genre. So I made it so that the vocal line of the chorus matches that rhythm. Anyways, I've got all you could want here, all you can need here. Then some harsh vocal criticism to make sure that the singer does her job. Anyways, I've got all you could want here, all you can need here. You're just so good. You're so good at this. Put it all together and this is what we get. Anyways, I've got all you could want here, all you can need here. Just you and me, right here, my love for life. This is something that I do in this one moment in the Wisdom Saga, which comes out in 9 days, specifically in the song Love in Paradise.
Soon into bed we'll climb and spend our time.
Not your man.
What you want here?
When Calypso sings the word time, she is interrupted by Odysseus singing the word I'm, which rhymes with time and allows us to have that connecting vowel. Soon into bed we'll climb and spend our time, not your man. Calypso in Epic is basically a child in an adult's body. And this makes her very fun to watch because she acts so differently from some of the other characters that Odysseus has encountered. For example, Circe. Circe is more composed and calculating, and she's able to adjust the way she acts in order to puppeteer others. Calypso has a lot more of a childlike playfulness to her, and for good reason. Like when Odysseus washes up on the beach and then wakes up later, Calypso is just like looming over him while he sleeps, like no sense of personal space, and is hitting him with the morning sleepy head. And the entire first chorus of Love in Paradise is the equivalent of a child showing you like their room. Like she's literally like, this is my island, this is my place, these are all our things, we have everything we need here, it's perfect here, look at this, look at that, and you're mine. Something that I think is absolutely hilarious about God games is that when we record the ensemble vocals for all of the gods' names, like Apollo, Hera, there's a specific way we sang each of them. And so for Apollo, it was kind of like this musical parrot in terms of like Apollo, Apollo, right? And then when we get to Aphrodite, it's very breathy, very light. Aphrodite, Aphrodite. When we get to Ares, you know, it's very grungy, very straightforward. Ares, Ares. Hera, of course, has got to be super, super vibey. Hera, Hera. But Hephaestus, the idea, the vibe for Hephaestus was like, we wanted gravelly old man. And so it started off as recording it as like, Hephaestus. But as we did more and more takes, it just got more and more ridiculous. So it started off as Hephaestus, but like within 15 minutes, we're just going Hephaestus. Bing, bing. Aries. I have loved the Erhu since I heard it for the first time in Dragon Driftway from Mario Kart 8 soundtrack. I am dead serious. Go listen to Dragon Driftway from Mario Kart 8, and the Erhu is so cool in it. Now, since Ares is the god of war, I wanted to have a subtle nod to Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And so I thought it was very fitting to have a traditional Chinese instrument, the Erhu, represent Ares. I love an explanation of what powers the other gods have in Epic, such as Ares' seeming ability to break Athena's quick thought. Absolutely! Okay, so let's start off with Ares. Ares is a god of war, just like Athena, and so he also has the ability to use quick thought. However, I like to refer to Ares' version of quick thought as dark quick thought, because it has the ability to cause distress or anger in the person who Ares is performing quick thought on. Now, what's cool about this is that in a fight scenario, like imagine if Ares was assisting Telemachus and Little Wolf instead of Athena, dark quick thought could actually incite a rage inside Telemachus, making him more brave and more resistant to pain. But the trade-off is that he might not be able to strategize as well as he would if he was using quick thought from Athena. I like to think of these as like stat increases or stat decreases. Now let's break down the quick thought battle in god games. First, Athena does quick thought on Aphrodite. Let's call this quick thought times 1. Then Ares interrupts and does quick thought on Athena, who is currently doing quick thought on Aphrodite. So there's like a quick thought inside a quick thought. So in that one I like to call quick thought times 5, right? And he's also causing distress in Athena's brain. So that's why she's like, ah! But then when Athena gets her get back, she is doing a quick thought inside a quick thought inside a quick thought. It's quick thoughtception. And I like to call this quick thought times like 10 or something. And their minds are going like super light speed fast. Okay, let's jump on to another god, Hermes. I like to imagine Hermes as the speedster of the gods, which means that he has super speed both in running and in flight. The trade-off for him is that his attacks might not deal as much damage per hit as someone like Ares, for example. But Hermes is able to get more hits in. I also like to imagine him having some kind of like trickster-like spells, like fake duplicates of him, or some kind of glitter diversion or distraction or something. Next up we have So Hephaestus is cool because I like to imagine that in terms of combat ability, he's strong, but not nearly as strong as he is with his machinations. I like to imagine him being super malleable and being able to build a bunch of devices that might enhance his fighting ability or his defense or enhance someone else. So he could build like gauntlets that make him stronger, or some kind of like cybernetic winged sandals to imitate Hermes' winged sandals, or like a lightning conductor to absorb Zeus's lightning bolts. I don't know. I feel like he could be very malleable, and that's super exciting to me. Like if you give him prep time, then he's actually a huge threat. Poseidon, 3 words, long-range fighter. I like to imagine that most of Poseidon's attacks have wide areas of effect. He can throw in tsunamis or summon Lystragonian giants to like dive bomb onto stuff. He can throw his trident, and when push comes to shove, he can use his ultimate move, Shatter the Ocean, where he summons a giant waterized version of himself to like do this super awesome, badass, giant attack that looks like it's shattering the ocean into 1,000 pieces. And so the thing with Poseidon is that most opponents would not be able to reach him because he's so well protected with all of his long-range attacks that involve the ocean. The trade-off would be that in close-range combat, he's still strong, but it's not his strength compared to using his long-range ocean attacks. So the best way to beat him would have to be getting in close. So someone like Hermes would be able to get the jump on him. Athena or Ares would have to play smart. All right, next up is Zeus. Overwhelming power. Overpowered. He's OP. His lightning is effective up close and far away. Not only that, but I like to imagine that he has this static around him that can induce a momentary paralysis on a close range opponent. This means that he has a counter to someone like Hermes. Also, in close range combat, he can move through beams of electricity to better position himself in a fight. So he could be like here, like about to hit you, and then he just uses electricity to like this way and then hits you, depending on like where those electric currents are around him. So it's not, he still has to like think of it through, but it's not like, he can't just like teleport, you know? Apollo! I like to imagine Apollo as more of a support type than an offensive type. I like to imagine that he has a much faster healing factor than the other gods do, and he's able to heal other gods from certain injuries as well. Additionally, when he plays his music on his lyre, he's able to increase the speed, strength, and durability of whoever he dedicates his song to. Now, in terms of offensive ability, I like to imagine that he can make himself shine so bright like the sun that it temporarily blinds whoever he's fighting. And then I like to imagine that he plays it safe by shooting arrows from afar. And then I also have ideas for like him having his own ultimate move where he like uses the sun on someone. But that's not something we see in Epic, so. Aphrodite! I like to imagine Aphrodite as having status afflicting powers, such as enamoration, where her opponent has conflicting emotions and it causes them to struggle to act. I also like to imagine that she can grant stat boosts to people who are fighting out of love. So someone like Odysseus. Hera! Okay, so the epic version of Hera is a little funny when it comes to powers, because we have that whole disco thing. Of course, she has the classic set of godlike abilities, like strength, speed, durability. But I also like to imagine she has this sort of trick room style ability called Groovy. With Groovy, she compels you into a dance battle with her. And if you lose the dance battle, your stats decrease, which gives her the upper hand. I just want to be extra clear, this is just an epic. Please don't try to find disco Hera in Greek mythology. You're not gonna find it. I also like to imagine that when push comes to shove, she has this like giant peacock form, where she does like Bex or something like that. I don't know. Dionysus. I know we don't actually hear from him in Epic, but I like to imagine that he has an ability to induce nausea or dizziness in his opponents, which makes it harder for them to, you know, fight. Like, if he's like intoxicated, I don't know. He can intoxicate his opponents. So yeah, those are just the first gods that come to mind. Oh, why is my hair doing? So yeah, those are just the first ones that, why is he doing that? Stop it. So yeah, those are just the first gods that come to mind. But I have ideas for others, you know. Song 31, Not Sorry for Loving You. The character of Calypso is so interesting to me because first, she shows us the way she is, and then later, we learn why she is the way she is. In Not Sorry for Loving You, we learn that she's been on this island alone since she was a little girl. So when Odysseus washes up on her shore, she's just like, I'm in love. My true love. Anyways, I can deep dive more into Calypso in another video, but I find her so intriguing because she has her own form of ruthlessness. She is keeping Odysseus on her island so that she can be happy, and she believes she is the best for Odysseus. She truly thinks in her heart that her and Odysseus are meant for each other. I often get asked what my songwriting process is like. Many times someone will ask me, oh, do you start with the lyrics first and then you put the music around it? Or do you start with the music first and then you start putting words on top of it? And the truth is there aren't many consistent aspects of my songwriting process. If you were to ask me how long it takes for me to write a song, I would tell you any time between a day and a year. I don't actually say that, but it's not false. The one consistent aspect of my songwriting process is that I never write lyrics without thinking of a vocal melody for those words as I write them. It's just not how my mind works. What I mean by this is that when I'm writing lyrics, I'm already singing them in my head. An alternative process to this that I don't do is writing down words and rhyming lines and then trying to create a melody for which those words can be sung. My mind just doesn't work like that. It is impossible for me to detach words from their melodiousness. So when I'm writing lyrics, I'm never writing like, so if I pushed you, or if I came on too strong, or if I ambushed you, for that, I'll say I was wrong, with no melody supporting those words. Instead, I'm writing down the words with a vocal melody in mind, like this.
So if I pushed you, or if I came on too strong, or if I ambushed you.
Words and their melodiousness are always attached for me. Other than that one singular aspect, I don't know that there is any other major consistent part of my songwriting process. It really depends on the song. For example, the song I was just singing, which isn't released yet in Epic, was a song that I wrote all of the lyrics and vocal melody, of course, and the chords for on piano before I did a full orchestration of it. That means that I sat on a piano like this, and I was just kind of mumbling lyrics and words to myself, trying to figure out how the song goes. Like,
so if I pushed you, or if I came on too strong, or if I ambushed you, for that I'll say it was wrong.
and then once I had an idea of how I wanted the entire song to go, and once I knew how it sounded in my head, then I went forward with orchestrating the entire thing.
So if I pushed you, or if I came on too strong, or if I ambushed you, for that I'll say it was wrong.
Now, when I was in college, I was always told by other students or by my professors that the process to write a song should be such that you can do the entire song only on piano first before you start orchestrating it. And they were all super amazing professors and students. However, in my personal experience, I found that that didn't always work the best for me. My personal belief is that the very essence of creativity is exploration. And so I found that when I allow other doors, other processes, and other methods of creating a song to be open, I find that that's where I thrive the most. So for example, the song Dangerous, which is another unreleased song in Epic that Hermes sings, when I was writing that song, I knew what I wanted the vocal melody to sound like, but I did not know the words in which I would put into that vocal melody. And so what I did instead was I continued forth with a idea of what the song will sound like, and then I start experimenting more with specific lyrics. So for example, I knew that I wanted but I didn't know yet the exact words, so I kept going forth with like making the full song orchestration wise, knowing what I wanted the song to be about, but not knowing the exact words and syllable separation for every single line, until I eventually got to
first stop, uncharted waters. When lost, look towards the sky. Follow the North Star, no matter how far you think you go when you keep on rowing.
And so as you can see, that's a very different process than the one that I used when I was writing Not Sorry for Loving You. In Not Sorry for Loving You, I started first with the lyrics tied to the vocal melody and a piano version of the song. And when I was doing Dangerous, while I didn't know all of the exact lyrics yet, I knew what I wanted them to sound like, I knew what I wanted the vibe of the song to be, and I knew what the general content of the song was, and so I moved forward with continuing the orchestration for the song and then diving into the lyrics, specifically the syllables and what exact words am I using for each line. There are many other times, like for example, The Horse and the Infant, where I was writing the orchestration at the same time as I was writing the lyrics. So if I had an idea for what the lyrics might sound like or what the orchestration could be or the music, I would do those hand in hand. And so I guess the point of me saying all this is that, one, My songwriting process is inconsistent, and I think that's why it makes it both terrifying and stressful, but also beautiful and fun. And two, that in my personal opinion, the essence of creativity is exploration. And so if you tell yourself that there's only one specific way to go about writing a song or creating anything, then you are putting restrictions on your own creativity. I was in a very low place in my life right before I wrote Not Sorry for Loving You. And I kid you not, I got inspired to write Not Sorry for Loving You when I was on the toilet and a video of Uncle Iroh showed up for me, and I immediately was like, I know what I need to do. And then I wrote Not Sorry for Loving You in one night after months of struggling to get the right Calypso song and the right feel for these characters. It just hit me all at once. Inspiration is always fleeting, but it always exists.
The very essence of creativity is exploration of the mind. I don't know.
So here's a fun fact about the song Dangerous. There was a time where I was going through a huge creative rut, and I could not, for the life of me, figure out how I wanted Hermes to sound in Epic. Because remember, I wrote Dangerous before I wrote Wouldn't You Like, so Wouldn't You Like didn't exist yet. And I was trying out so many different things, and nothing was working the way I wanted to. But then, around that time, my dad had recently gotten me these light bulbs, which look like normal light bulbs and stuff, but they have this little phone app. And so I was messing with the settings, and I found this. And I kid you not, I was sitting at my desk, and I was looking at these light bulbs, and I thought to myself, oh, I've got it. 80s synthwave! And now we have Dangerous.
Wanna be dangerous, my friend.
This doesn't happen very often, but something that I love getting to do when the stars align is this sort of wordplay between choruses where it sounds the same, but because the way that the word is made up, it's not. It's slightly different. For example, in Thunderbringer, in the first verse and chorus, where it's this whole metaphor about Odysseus, we hear thunder bring her. But in the second chorus, it's thunder bringer, as in a bringer of thunder. Thunder bring her, thunder bringer. Another example of this is in Dangerous, because throughout the song we hear Hermes singing, well, it's a little bit dangerous, my friend, dangerous, my friend. But in Odysseus's chorus, it sounds the same, danger is my friend, dangerous, my friend, but it's not dangerous, it's don't you know that danger is my friend. And I love that so much. I think that's so cool. On one hand, because it allows me to continue the sounds that we hear vocally in the chorus, right? It's the same notes. And it's the same sound of danger is my friend. But this one feels different because we've been hearing that danger is nearby motif throughout the whole show. And you can bet your sandwich it's going to be in that last saga in a really cool way. Song 32, Dangerous. Hermes is one of my favorite characters in Epic because he's one of, if not the only character that shows up and just helps. Both times. In Act 1, he pulls up and he's like, here's the holy moly. And then in Act 2, he pulls up and he's like, here's the windbag. Now, if you recall, after the Cyclops saga, this divine, seemingly impassable storm blocks the way home to Ithaca. We find out later that that storm was placed there by Poseidon to stop Odysseus from getting home. In Keep Your Friends Close, Aeolus takes that storm and takes the winds from that storm and puts it into a bag, the wind bag. Once Odysseus slashes open the bag to escape Poseidon, that storm is released once again, blocking the way back to Ithaca, which is why Odysseus and his crew have to find other ways to get home, like through the lair of Scylla. Anyways, the wind bag, or particularly the storm inside the wind bag, is so cool to me because you can also look at it symbolically, representing this idea of ruthlessness that Odysseus is unable to push through in order to make it home. Until 600 strike, that is, but... So Homer's The Odyssey is filled with so many different characters. One of the biggest challenges I've had so far while writing Epic is making each of these characters feel unique and distinguishable musically. So in Epic, Charybdis is this giant whirlpool monster, and I wanted to find a way to make this monster different from the other monsters we see in the show, like Scylla or the Cyclops. So a year ago, I told myself I would never write a song in 5/4, but as I continue writing songs, I keep having to challenge myself and find a new genre or a new style or something I haven't done before. And the one idea that kept coming to my head was this idea that Charybdis throws Odysseus' balance off, the same way 5/4 initially threw my balance off. Let's get into the music. All right, the first part is obvious. We have to have some electric guitar in there because Odysseus is being a badass.
You must be who Hermes mentioned, a monster here to block my way.
Now, big giant battles like this are some of the moments where Epic really gets to shine because it's go big or go home. I can throw as many instruments at this as I want. Now, Charybdis is the only monster in the show that doesn't actually sing. That's a spoiler. So I used a mixture of beluga and humpback whale screeches as well as some monster sounds in order to bring life to Charybdis. Now, one of my biggest challenges with 5.4 is finding a way to make the song catchy. But after hours and hours of trial and error, I found that what worked best for me was making it so that the drum beat, the melody, and the vocal line all highlighted each other. Listen to how all these different aspects highlight the same parts of the beat.
I already know your tactics. When you swallow, you attack with more tools that attract prey. But I see a disadvantage, 'cause I don't even have to.
Then for the chorus, we throw everything at it. Choirs. Some electronic leads. Something that I think is really cool is I have the electric guitar harmonize with the electronic lead. Some organ, some piano, some crazy bass. And just to signal for the boss battle that's about to show up right after Charybdis, I had some trumpets. Put it all together and this is what we get. Song 33, Charybdis. Oh man, going full video game boss battle for this one was so fun, especially because it's like one of those times in a video game where you fight what you believe is the final boss, and then you win, and you're like, yes, we did it, we're home, we win, just to find out that that's not the final boss, and then the final boss shows up, and you're like, oh man! Because the true final boss is Song 34, Get in the Water, when Poseidon comes back.
Get in the water!
First of all, I love this shirt. So there are two things we need to understand about Poseidon's music in Epic. Number one, Poseidon's music is filled with triplets. We can hear this both in Ruthlessness and in Get in the Water, including the waves themselves. I've been waiting for... Numero second. The instrument that represents Poseidon musically is a trumpet. The trumpet and the brass ensemble are saved for very specific moments in Poseidon's songs, like when he's flexing his power. However, you may have noticed that there's a section in Ruthlessness that's carried by an electric guitar.
In all my years of living, it isn't very often that I get pissed off.
And there's a section of Get in the Water that's carried by a 12-string acoustic guitar.
Get in the water!
Why the hell am I doing that, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you. In Epic, Poseidon is a parallel for Odysseus. He represents what Odysseus can be and the ruthless creature that Odysseus will become.
So there's a really cool detail in Get in the Water that I don't think anyone's noticed yet. So you might know that I like to assign characters with instruments. Think of it as like Pokemon typing, where they have like a first typing and then like a secondary typing. Characters will have like a main instrument and then usually some kind of like secondary instruments that are also in their music, just so that their music isn't just one instrument the entire time. And Poseidon's instrument is the trumpet. He also has Odysseus's instruments in his music, which is electric and acoustic guitars. In Ruthlessness, he has that electric guitar we hear, but in Get in the Water, he has a 12-string guitar. Specifically, this one. But there's a moment later where Odysseus also tries to use Poseidon's instrument. But not only does he try to use his instrument, he tries to use his melodic motif. And it's in the part where he says, maybe you could learn to forgive. Does that melody remind you of anything? Ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. And of course, this does not work out in Odysseus' favor because Poseidon, he is not capable of forgiveness. He does not have it within him to forgive. Anyway, so yeah, I like the idea that Poseidon being sung his motif, but with the exact opposite meaning, can sort of symbolize him just not being able to do that. Those two things don't go together for him.
Throughout the show, we've seen Odysseus haunted as he remembers everyone who's died under his command. In the underworld, we see Polites. We also see his mom who died waiting for him. In Love in Paradise, he also hallucinates Eurylochus there as well. And in this moment at the end of Get in the Water, while Poseidon is pushing Odysseus to the bottom of the ocean, don't ask how his ears don't, pop from the pressure. It's video game anime logic. As he's being pushed to the bottom of the ocean, he is also hallucinating all of his dead comrades and his mom pulling him down to the depths to his death. And in this moment, he draws his final breath until Song 35, 600 Strike. The power of pure, unbridled anime video game rage and love for his wife.
And I will get back to my wife!
I don't think you get it. I can't afford to die, 'cause I will get back to my son. And I will get back to my wife!
Gives him the will to finally truly become the monster. Cue the red eyes. Now Odysseus is fully embracing ruthlessness, and so he's able to use the storm that, remember, was blocking his way home both literally and symbolically. He's able to use that storm in the windbag against Poseidon. But it's the torture scene that really gets us going. Because remember, since Odysseus opened the windbag, the storm is now back blocking the way home to Ithaca. But that's okay, because it's only blocking him literally now, not symbolically. Because all Odysseus has to do is show Poseidon his new technique, the stabby stabby wabby wabby. A detail that I absolutely love about this scene is that the last lines that Odysseus and Poseidon sing to each other is the other character's lyrical motif. Poseidon sings, "You monster," and Odysseus sings, "Didn't you say that ruthlessness is mercy upon our..." I love this saga. It's got so many things that I want in a saga. It's got like emotional moments, it's got boss battles, upgrades, it's got comedy, it's got darkness, it's got character arcs. The songs are so catchy. Let's talk about building anticipation for Penelope. You see, one of the things that I try to do in Epic is put us in the shoes, or should I say sandals, of Odysseus. This means that for the most part, and especially in Act 1, we get the same level of information as Odysseus. This is why we don't have any songs of Poseidon just kind of lurking around planning Odysseus' demise, or why once Athena leaves, for a pretty decent chunk of the story, she's gone. What this also means is that we as the audience, similar to Odysseus, don't really get to see Penelope until we're back in Ithaca for the Ithaca saga. We hear about Penelope because Odysseus calls out to her every other song. We hear a semblance of her voice when Odysseus is dreaming in Keep Your Friends Close. And we see a siren impersonate Penelope during the song Suffering. And we see Odysseus hallucinating Penelope during Thunderbringer. As the literal end to his suffering, "Let me take the suffering from..." He sees getting back to Penelope as the end to all of his suffering. He's doing all of this to get back to her. And so, that being said, one of the things that I am most excited about in the Ithaca saga is finally getting to see Penelope in the flesh. And not to spoil it for you, but the transition between the Vengeance saga and the Ithaca saga is a subtle one, but it's so cool to me. Because the last thing we see and hear in the Vengeance saga is Odysseus responding to a rhetorical question with a literal answer. Poseidon asks Odysseus, "After everything you've done, how will you sleep at night?" Steven, I'm so sorry. I can't do your voice like you do. You're so good. And Odysseus responds with, "Next to my wife." That song and the Vengeance saga ends with that. And then the next thing we hear is Penelope's motif, but done correctly with the right instruments. Not the one from Suffering, which is done with these synthetic vocal sounds. This is the fake one. This is not the real Penelope. This is the real Penelope. So to recap, we hear Odysseus say, "Next to my wife." And then we hear the instruments of the wife, and now we get to see the wife, because that's how the Ithaca saga starts. With a viola and a string ensemble. If you can't tell, I love the character of Penelope. And if you think that build-up is cool, just wait till you hear Song 40, particularly the intro. The build-up with the strings in that, it goes crazy. Anyway, so I do a lot of work to build anticipation for Penelope so that the moment that we see her, it feels earned and it feels larger than life. It feels special. It's kind of similar to how we only see Poseidon twice throughout the show, but his presence is so powerful because both times he just shows up and causes damage. Or how we only see Hermes twice, but each time that Hermes shows up, it rejuvenates us from all of the other dark, intense moments throughout the rest of the show. Anyways, I'm so excited for you guys to finally get to see and hear Penelope. She is one of my favorite characters, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I get super emotional in Penelope's songs, and I hope that you guys get to feel things too.
Penelope.
Many of the characters in Epic have a specific instrument designated to them, and Penelope's is the viola. I actually plant this seed of association between Penelope and the viola in the very first song in Epic, when Odysseus is singing, Penelope. This same melody plays at the beginning of Song 36, The Challenge, signaling to us that this song is about Penelope. Because Odysseus is so in love with Penelope, I really wanted Penelope's music to have some gorgeous melodic moments. The way that I do that is that I have a viola or some other legato playing strings double the melody during my favorite parts of her vocal line so that hopefully they stick in your head for longer. One of my favorites is this part in the challenge where Penelope sings, where the world is all about to change. And then 2 lines later, she sings, for the challenge I arranged. And the viola and a cello do this really cool swerving thing where they're harmonizing and doubling the melody. And I love it. So it goes like this. Some kind of sign that my world is all about to change. And then a cello jumps in and it sounds like this. Man, I just love that part. It's my favorite. Something that I think is really cool is that just like how there are moments where Odysseus is thinking about Penelope and a viola is in the background of the music, there are moments where Penelope is thinking about Odysseus in the challenge and an acoustic guitar can be heard in the music. This is a cool way to connect the two even after 20 years of being apart. And it's something that I intend to use in the final song, which I want to be a duet between just Odysseus and Penelope. We're getting closer. I have hiccups. Here we go again. Man, this is hard. This is gonna be the one. We're so close. I just gotta get it right once. This one. This is gonna be it. This is gonna be that one. That's not gonna be it. Okay, this one. Though I never thought that these would be the lengths we go for love, I would not have it any other way. Good enough. Good enough for what we need.
Then when he docks it, we can reach it. Let us leave now. Today we can strike it. Boy, stop shaking. I'll slit his throat. Hold down. To slowly break his pride, his trust, his faith, and his bones into tiny pieces. In the great below, when the crowd is where the princes, only the ocean and I will know.
Ah, man. And so I love the guy. He's so nice and he has such an awesome control of his voice and he brings such a cool personality to the character and I'm so happy about this. But one of my favorite changes in the narrative style occurs in Song 38, when Odysseus takes on the suitors. Throughout the show, we've seen Odysseus employing tactics to take on his enemies or his obstacles, but in this song, we get to experience how much of a threat Odysseus is from the suitors' point of view, and he is terrifying. We don't get to hear his planning beforehand, we only get to see the consequences of his actions, making him the final boss. So each different narrative style is with the intention of trying to create a fun little switch up that still makes sense to the story, hopefully in ways that add to the story or add to our perception of a character. So my intention with song 38 is to capture the entire battle with the suitors in that song. So it's looking like it's going to be the longest or second longest song in the show. And the reason this song is so fun to write is because Odysseus himself is the boss battle, which means that unlike most of the show, which is kind of told from Odysseus' point of view, or it's kind of following Odysseus, this song is told from the suitor's point of view. And the reason why that's fun is because it shows us how terrifying Odysseus can truly be when you go up against him. Each of these verses is sung by a group of suitors right before they die. And so Odysseus, he's coming in, he's shooting them all in the dark, and then he's like retreating back into the dark, and he's like, I'm a badass. He doesn't actually say that.
Oh, King, our leader is dead. You've destroyed the serpent's head. Now the rest of us are no longer a threat. Oh, King, forgive us instead, so that no more blood is shed. Let's have open arms instead.
No.
Woo!
You did it! We're done! Good job! Sound effects are so important to me when creating epic. Certain sounds, when set up correctly, allow me to grant the audience information that the characters within the world of the musical do not have. The way that I do this is I try to use some kind of sound, whether it's a type of instrument or some melodic motif or a sound effect that stands out from everything else in the context of the music. This is especially effective if you can attach that sound to a memorable moment or character. Here's an example. Some of you may have heard that sound and immediately thought of Athena, and that's good. That's the intention. Every time Athena pulls someone into quick thought, that sound effect plays. For those of you who don't know, quick thought is Athena's ability to have entire telepathic conversations with someone in milliseconds by pulling their mind into another dimension. Anyways, most of the time we experience the story from the perspective of the person being pulled into quick thought. But what happens when that's not the case? What happens when we're experiencing the story from, I don't know, the suitor's perspective, and we're fighting someone? And every time I try to attack this person, that sound effect plays, and they're able to immediately dodge my attack and then knock me back with a counterattack. To the suitor, it just appears like my opponent is very skilled, but to the listener, there is more unspoken information that adds to the scene. So it makes moments like this really cool. Especially when at the end of all that, I bring back two motifs to reveal who it is. Song 38 is taking me a while, but there's this one part that reintroduces a character, and I'm very, very happy for the music that plays when this character comes back in, and I just wanted to show you guys that, so check this out. Isn't that so cool?
I'd like to tell you about the musicality of Telemachus fighting the suitors. Telemachus is super in sync with Athena at this moment. And so right before each of these rounds of attacks, Telemachus is going into quick thought, mapping out his attacks, and then dishing them out.
Attack the prince!
I'll attack the prince!
Not only that, but during each round of attacks, we can hear Athena's piano playing the melody for fight, little wolf, fight, little wolf, fight.
Check!
Here's it isolated so you can hear it without all the other stuff.
Attack the prince!
But do you want to know something really cool? The actual rhythm for each of Telemachus's rounds of attacks are the rhythms for different motifs that are related to Telemachus. For example, his first round of attacks is similar to the riff he does on the word mind from Will Be Fine when he's singing with Athena on mind. Can you hear it? Mind. Except this one is closer to the actual riff from Warrior of the Mind because he's more in sync with Athena because he's now a Warrior of the Mind. Do I sound insane? It's because I am. The second round of attacks is to the rhythm of fight, little wolf, fight, little wolf, fight. Can you hear it?
Fight, little wolf, fight, little wolf, fight.
The third round of attacks is straight out of Legendary. And then in the last round of attacks, when Telemachus is tired and he doesn't do as many attacks, he does the second half of his father's melodic motif. So the bada bum 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 bum. That part, bum 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 bum, is the rhythm of his attacks. Can you hear it? Ba-da-da-da-dum, bum 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 bum. And the reason why this is so cool to me is because it establishes that the way that characters are able to fight is connected to their melodic motifs. So like, imagine like a fighting game and you're playing as Telemachus, one of his combos or one of his moves would be in the rhythm of bum 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 bum. I think that's really fun. And as a cute little note, you can actually hear the moment where Athena is urging Telemachus to stop Melanthius once Melanthius is about to run off with all the weapons and give them to all the other suitors. Because you can hear Athena's triplet version of the quick thought piano melody.
We don't fight fair. Stop! We don't fight fair.
And you can hear the quick thought sound effect.
Stop!
Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun to make, and it was really cool to make Telemachus have such an awesome, badass Warrior of the Mind moment.
I can't help but wonder what your world must be. If we're like each other, if I have your strength in me, I can't help but feel like sorrow's all I've known. And I can't help but realize for so long I felt alone.
And I think that there's a piano that's like a... Oh no, something like that. I don't know why this song gets me all emotional.
Here's a small detail about the final moment between Athena and Odysseus that I very much love. When their conversation ends, we hear two different instruments playing two different melodies.
Well.
The first one is a piano, Athena's instrument, playing the melody from Warrior of the Mind. This is also the melody for This Is My Goodbye. And the second instrument is a guitar, Odysseus' instrument, playing the melody for Penelope.
Very well.
And I really like this because it shows where Athena and Odysseus' heads are at, and also that at the end of the day, they're just two different instruments playing two different melodies.
And it breaks my heart.
In Song 40, Odysseus makes the point to Penelope that he is no longer the same man she once fell in love with. And while the lyrics do a lot of the work in expressing that, I want to show you how the music demonstrates that he has changed as well. Early on in Epic, it's established that Odysseus has a nylon string guitar playing during his more vulnerable moments, and especially when he's talking about Penelope, as opposed to his electric guitar styles whenever he's planning, fighting, or using his cunning. The song Just a Man is a great example of his nylon stringed guitar vulnerability. However, when we get to the Act 1 closer, Monster, where Odysseus decides he needs to change in order to get home, we hear an electric guitar playing this melody. Back to Song 40. In this vulnerable moment where Odysseus is telling Penelope that he is not the same man she once fell in love with, you would think that a nylon string guitar plays. But instead, we hear the same electric guitar from Monster with the same strumming pattern. On top of that, Epic often associates its theme of ruthlessness with triplets in music. For example, the songs Ruthlessness and Get in the Water both incorporate triplets, as well as the song Survive, where Odysseus' intention is to the cyclops. The significance of this is that in Song 40, in the chorus, Odysseus asks Penelope if she would still love him if she knew all of the things that he's done. But the second time that this chorus shows up, which is after he hints at the actions that he's taken, the chorus is played again with music in triplets. The triplets hint at the fact that this is the ruthless Odysseus asking whether Penelope will love him. Furthermore, after Odysseus and Penelope reach a resolution, the Just a Man theme comes back, but this time it's played in triplets. This symbolizes that even though Odysseus is accepted by Penelope, no matter the actions he's taken, he has changed in a way that allowed him to get home to his family.
The music never lies.
I've had to do a bunch of weird things for Epic, but one thing that stands out in particular to me is when I had to call Anna Lee, the voice of Penelope, and say, "Hey Anna, I need you to send me some vocal takes of you breathing." To which she responded, "Okay." See, the moment after Penelope says, "So I guess that makes him you," used to be much shorter, immediately going to the next part of the song. However, I really wanted to let us sit in that moment for a bit longer, so that we can feel the impact of those words on both Penelope and Odysseus. And so I thought, you know what? Let's have a pause there. Let's hear Penelope's scattered breaths. Anyways, thank you so much, Anna, for trusting me with this bizarre request. I really appreciate it.
I would love for you to do a deep dive into Would You Fall in Love With Me Again? How you arranged the music, writing the lyrics, etc. Let's do it. Something very important to me in capturing in the song was the tension of not knowing how Penelope will respond to Odysseus. I wanted to capture this feeling of uncertainty, and so the song begins with this single viola playing this straight note, and then you can actually hear Odysseus' breath, and then him singing the one thing you can always count on him to sing, Penelope. And then after he says Penelope, and right before he opens the door, there's this crescendo of all these strings, all these instruments. What's gonna happen? The first time in 20 years that Odysseus and Penelope finally get to see each other. And then silence. Now, something that's really interesting to me is that in this moment that Penelope is asking if this is Odysseus who she is talking to, the nylon string guitar plays, because the nylon string guitar is that soft Odysseus, that gentle Odysseus that Penelope knows him by. So from an instrument standpoint, this is kind of like a calling out to, is this you? Is this the instrument you are? Now, when Odysseus starts singing his verses 1 and 2, we don't hear his nylon string guitar here. We hear the same soft electric guitar that is present throughout the song Monster. And so while Odysseus is singing that he is not the man that Penelope fell in love with, he's also using a different instrument in this moment. This is not the same nylon string guitar that she knows. This is his electric guitar. Even though it's his soft electric guitar, because he's not in the moment of like, I'm trying to trick you, Penelope. Now, if you know me, you might know that I like to write big songs, you know, Warrior of the Mind, Ruthlessness, Thunderbringer. I like these really big songs. And so this song was very challenging for me because, first off, for the 95% of the song, there's no percussion, there's no beat, there's no groove, you know? So that alone was a challenge for me. And also, I wanted the instruments to be very hyper-focused on Odysseus and Penelope's instruments, which is why for so much of this, you only hear the guitar and the strings. This entire first chorus is just that soft bonfire guitar and the string ensemble. Now, as we go into the second verse, we're able to bring in other instruments and we hear motifs from different songs because Odysseus is recounting the past events. So we have a motif from Ruthlessness here, we have a motif from Thunderbringer, we have a motif from Not Sorry for Loving You, and then in this second chorus, which I love so much, we wanted the strings to be spiraling upward. The anxiety, all this tension, this feeling is rising with Odysseus. So we have those strings that are going, you know, and so with all of this rising tension, all of this music, we then go to Penelope's verse. And remember, Penelope's music, I always want it to be beautiful, gorgeous. So we have this soft piano, we have those strings coming in. Now here's a fun detail. If you recall, a lot of times whenever Odysseus is tricking someone or is doing his cunning stuff, you hear his guitar go, bum 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 bum. Now, in the moment that Penelope is telling Odysseus to move the wedding bed, you know what her viola is doing? Now, something I want you guys to remember is that Odysseus is the final boss of Epic. The suitors could not beat him, so it is up to Penelope! And so after she asks Odysseus to move the wedding bed, and he gets into this more emotional state, you know what instrument comes back? In this this moment where Odysseus is getting angry and he's recounting how he built the bed out of the olive tree, his nylon string guitar comes back, the instrument that is associated with the Odysseus that Penelope knew, who current Odysseus is saying isn't a thing anymore. That guy's dead. Now in this moment, angry Odysseus is back, but something really cool happens when Penelope fires back at him. We hear not just a viola, an electric viola! Because just like Odysseus and his love for Penelope, Penelope is ruthless in her love for Odysseus and is willing to make the argument that the Odysseus that she knows and loves is still alive, even if it pisses off Odysseus. Now, for a quick moment, I'd like to read to you guys some notes that I sent to Gigi when we were working on the animatic for this moment at the end of Would You Fall in Love With Me Again. To prove a point, Penelope then tells Odysseus to move their wedding bed out of the room, since he says he's not her husband. This turns into a momentary argument as Odysseus gets angry, yelling at Penelope, saying that that's impossible because he built their wedding bed into the olive tree where they first met. And so the bed cannot be moved because it is literally rooted in the ground. Penelope then yells back at him, saying that only her husband knew that information, therefore he must be her husband. There's a pause, a moment of tension here, as Odysseus was not expecting Penelope to fight back with the same amount of anger. He also realizes that, for once, Odysseus is the one who had been tricked. Similarly to how Odysseus responded to Poseidon's rhetorical question with a literal answer, "How will you sleep at night?" next to my wife, Penelope purposefully responded to Odysseus's rhetorical statement of, "I am not the man you fell in love with," by treating it as literal, proving the simple point that no matter what, he is still Odysseus and he is still her husband. Penelope is pushing through the pain she is carrying, the pain she has carried for 20 years, and she sees the pain Odysseus has carried for 20 years, and so she is fighting Odysseus to help end Odysseus's pain. While the suitors couldn't beat Odysseus' boss battle, Penelope does. She gets him angry and tricks him, all to prove that she will always love him, and she will always fall in love with him forever. So when she says, "Don't tell me you're not the same person," there are tears welling up in her eyes. How could he say this? After 20 years of her waiting, he comes back and says that he's not the man she fell in love with? No, he is, and she will not accept, nor will she allow him to accept, the metaphorical death of the man she loved unconditionally for 20 years, because Penelope has been fighting her own battles too, and for 20 years she has been waiting. Even when others died waiting, like Odysseus' mom, Penelope kept on waiting and pushing through pain and waiting for 20 years, all for Odysseus. Now, Penelope being ruthless in her love for Odysseus is illustrated musically because everything from this point on is in triplets. Even songs that were originally in 4/4, like Just a Man, the reprise of that, is also in triplets. So this moment here, not just in person. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, triplet, 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 triplet. And now something that I really love is that Penelope's instruments are also acknowledging the pain that Odysseus' instruments are carrying. Because remember in Odysseus' second chorus, there's those strings that are going da 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 da. But now in this section from Penelope, there's those strings and her strings going downwards. They have both been carrying pain and they've both been spiraling, but they're spiraling into each other. Listen to this. They're both spiraling, but they fall into each other because she will always fall in love with him again because they are true love. Now, while the music in this last section is playing Just a Man, it's playing it differently in triplets, which throughout Epic has been synonymous with ruthlessness. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We hear the trumpet triplets. Where'd that trumpet come from? You guys know. And so the music playing Just a Man with the Ruthless Triplets version is saying that this is a different man and that it's not the same man Penelope fell in love with. And yet Penelope is saying, screw all that. This is the same man I fell in love with. I'll let you guys decide who is correct. So today I finished writing Epic the Musical. which is a show that I've been working on for 3 years and 3 months now. To celebrate, I'm here at the beach, enjoying the waves and the light of the sun. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for supporting me throughout all of this, making this journey so much better than I could have ever imagined. I appreciate you all. I love you all. I can't wait to show you guys epic musical. See you soon, my friends.
So tell me, would you fall in love with me again? I don't care how we're alive, no matter how long it's been your life. Don't tell me you're not the same person. You're always my husband. I've been waiting.
And that's my journey.